First thing on the agenda, Bjerke, road closure request for a portion of W-42 on August 12th and other road matters.
Yeah, what I got out of that email, all that sits inside, section over it. If that is the route marked for W-42, any part of our system that is marked like it, and they have the yellow on blue route markers, code says a detour has to be established for that. I don't know where the city wants to do that. I mean, if they need any signs from us, they're more than welcome to get them, but,
Well, see there, the portion of W-42 that comes in from the south,
yeah,
that actually, if you go straight ahead, goes past the park.
yep,
That will be closed also on that day. And now they wanted to move where the water ball used to be a couple blocks down up to that street in order to get it closer
yeah,
to the park. That means we just have to move it down
yeah.
another.
And that's all they have to do is just put up a detour that marks W-42 going through.
Yeah, it came up at the council meeting and I said, well, discuss it.
If it was in Spillville, that's different. I mean, we've got a 2080 agreement on that, but Ocean, that is their street 100%. And, they should mark a detour. I don't know.
It actually worked pretty easy because when you come in from the north on W-42, what we'll do then is just send it
Checking straight.
straight across that intersection down to the
Yeah.
next street.
I mean, it's easy, but I don't think we should get involved in where they put their
Okay.
detour. That's up to them. I don't know where they put everybody for that festival, so. But yeah, it's really no concern of your guys' at all, so.
Sounds good.
I gave Ben vacation of, it's in the road records, it's road number 1480. And it's that little dead end that goes to the old parsonage north of Ridgeway. It is an established road. But now that the church is getting rid of it and it's gonna go to private ownership, I don't know why we would maintain that as a road. I have no idea what anyone's gonna say on it, but I think now's our chance to get rid of it and not have to maintain it any longer. I think they're gonna have an issue anyway, because the road in the record stops before you get to the parcel they're getting rid of. So there's kind of a gap there. It's not very long. It's, 150 feet, but, it's gonna be between them and their buyers who will take the road, because the road will go back to the church. The church owns the fields yet, and that's where the road will go.
So we need a motion to set a public hearing for the vacation of that
Yeah.
road
You do, although I did not have that on the agenda, so
Yeah,
we
that
probably
would
should
on
set.
next Monday's agenda.
Project updates, brunings are done, grading on Bridge 237. Brennan has to come back in, put the approach guardrail in. Once that's done. Yes, we still had shouldering to do, yard work to do on 175th Street. I golfed in a golf tournament there, Southwind, and it rode nice. I drove the whole thing and back and picked my wife off, making her ride the whole road, but it rides pretty nice. Yeah. They gotta have everything done before those painters come. They're just gonna mess the paint up. Paint doesn't stick like it used to anyway, and, so hopefully it'll be maybe next week the painters.
They finish up with the concrete then. I seen they had some by the bike trail. They had to.
It's all in. I didn't see anything that I thought it needed to be there. But they still have some shoulder. I mean, there's drop offs on it yet that you don't want to slip off those. But it looks good. It rides good. Just hopefully we can get it open and get completely out of everybody's way and just let them use it. But not that they aren't using it like crazy anyway. Bridge 317. Well, the box culvert, they stripped that box on W14 and K has moved out of there. They moved into another county and did another extension think it was in Fayette, but I might be wrong. While they were still waiting for those caps to cure on 317. I think they'll be back this week. When they get back, they'll finish prepping the cars and get ready to set those. And once that's set, they got some railing to do. They got to gusset them together, and then there's a ton of holes on that car that they have to cover before we can surface it. But ideally, when we're done, it'll be a rock surface, so it's kind of easier to maintain it than it is if you were to put a. But that's been our experience. We've got a few different decks out there, and the gravel ones work the best. The blades can just kind of blend in and off, and it works better. But hopefully they'll be back this week and get after that one, keep that moving. So weather's been good for it.
If they take ownership, we won't be blading it.
No, but it'd be easier for him to blade it.
Yeah.
So,
And that's in the works. I mean,
yes.
By an agreement, well, now
agreement, yeah.
the bridge is gonna be done and we still don't have an agreement, right?
No, but he's pretty much said he's.
We could always close it if you.
That's true.
Or you make it out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't take much. But, yeah. Last week you had people in about Horn Hollow Road. And open for people to use. I don't think that's in the county's best interest.
High liability.
Well, there's that. I mean, but they sit out there everywhere, but this one's been brought to our attention. If they leave it and they want to leave that public access, one, if you can't fall under that category. You could make it a B, you could make it a C. Both of those require a public hearing just as if you were to vacate it. B just basically means we know it's there. We're really not going to do anything with it unless it absolutely needs it. And that's how we've been running our class Bs and Cs now. The only difference between a B and a C is gated and people can be cited for trespassing. That's the only difference between them.
Then you wouldn't want to see, because the whole point is to leave it for public
Right.
access.
And those gates have to be kept closed. That's part of the,
They have someone that was gonna be on today's agenda to ask them to vacate that,
yeah.
but she rescheduled for a couple. Because that's.
Right, and if you kept it, I just think at some point in the future, that's gonna come back and haunt you, that something's gonna need to be done or wanted to be done. And they're gonna come back here and say, hey, we want that done. It may not affect you, it may be, 6 boards from now, but, I think it's the best interest to let it go. We've done it in the past where we've gotten rid of the road and the landowners sat down and said, we want to still use it. And we've had agreements and easements drawn up between them. So they got that done and those easements are in place, but the county is completely removed. We have no say in it anymore. And
That if you vacate it, that could be something between people that have the house and the landowners of the land. They could have some kind of agreement that they could use it as a walking
Yes.
trail or something.
yes, and we've helped them through that to get that done.
But that's a private agreement
But that's
between
a
them.
private agreement. We have no stake in it. And, I don't think it's gonna go away real quickly, but you can discuss that with the next engineer too. But that, just my history says if you can get rid of it, and you don't want to be involved in anything that's gonna have potential problems coming down the road. You got enough of them as it is.
So if you vacate that, does that go back to the original ownership, which would be?
It goes back to the property from which it was originally acquired. And that can get a little tricky.
Because that would be back to the house then, not.
You gotta go back to when it was when the road was created, how was the land, what was the ownership of the land at that time? And then since that point, if the land has been sold and cut up into pieces, different people will get different parts of the road depending on how much of it you vacate.
Very unlikely they would go to the house because they
I
don't
don't think
own
they
the
do.
house in a little bit. So it's the people that own the land between the house and the road that are gonna end up getting the road. And
Right.
that's probably this Lucy Schempp that was gonna be on the
Right. I
agenda.
mean, you could vacate farther up it. You gotta be careful there for a landlocked issue, because if you vacate it up to the house, the Schempp that are on the end, that's their access point. Because that's been the access forever. So you have to be careful where those lines start and stop, and you don't give somebody or take away someone's access. Code says you have to leave reasonable access, and I don't know what other reasonable access you could give them other than the one they have.
So the redrawing where the current road is in the process, and that'll finish up and that'll maintain access for everybody. At that point is the part that's been questioned, and that's like that we're recommending to vacate.
Well, and then everything to the west of Wagon Road as well, because it goes,
Up to 52
yeah, it goes,
and yeah.
well, it doesn't go to 52, it goes up to,
Well,
it goes back up to Wagon Road. It crosses Wagon and they kind of do this and meet again. And it's all one establishment. I'd get rid of the whole works, every piece of it you could, other than that part that Mike has retraced. Because we had to do that to show this is where it sits. It's right here.
Does Mike have it defined where it is?
Yeah, he doesn't have the plats done, but the survey work is done. He knows where it sits.
So do we go back to the 1940s type of reference? Or really aerial, or what do we use?
You'll go back into the road record and it's a lot older than 1940. I think it was actually in the 1880s that road was established. And it's so old, its number is Roman numeral. That's how old it is.
So you're talking about vacating from here back,
Yeah. And I think
keep this public road.
what the part that he established, in the retracement, which, yeah, this is what he's got. Now he's probably have to take this all the way out to Wagon just to cover everybody's training on it, but, that retracement, and in the vacation, you will state that this retracement is exempt out of that vacation. You are not vacating what was redone on a retracement. Just everything else.
any of the retracement actually falls on the original road that'll stay.
That would stay because the retracement is saying this is where it is.
And
You're getting rid of the
These-
road in the woods.
Yes.
Leo is giving his opinion now, but if she's not coming back to the 26th, it'll be someone else sitting here at that point.
Right.
But yeah,
It's not the cleanest vacation by any means, but it's far from the worst one we've ever.
How long is the retracement?
It's basically everything here in red.
Well, how long is that?
I don't know, it's a little over between a quarter and a half mile. It's not a lot of roadway.
that shouldn't really involve any of the rest of this though, because
No.
this was in process and getting done before any of this other request came along.
Right.
What we're talking
That is actually a fairly common thing, like the road I live on was retraced a few years ago because it isn't laying where the plat said it was, so they.
No, it wasn't even close.
Mhm.
So they retraced it and all the neighbors signed it. Now it's officially where it is, so.
We actually did that with the old stage road where it meets the river road and goes up in the backside of the,
Oh, cause it's on like the other side of that creek or something, or.
yeah,
something
there
that-
were, if I'm getting the number right, I think there were 5 different establishments of that road going through there, and we had no idea which one we sat on. And so if there's an old bridge in there, there's all kinds of stuff in there. And we retraced the road where it sits, and we vacated all other alignments, got rid of them all. So,
So just to be clear, what we're talking about is to vacate the green line that used to be like horse-drawn carriage route.
Yeah.
through the woods, way up north, down through and into the other, just 52.
Yep. And there is a portion of that that sits now in the city of Decorah, and you have no authority to do anything with
I
that.
think a
That's,
portion of it goes through a house or a shed or something.
yeah, that's up to the city to do, so. And they can do it, they'll do it the same way you do it.
But the public access will be just into the end of, that landowner's driveway at the end.
Right. Because you
That's
stop
enough.
short of that, that landlocks them,
Right.
and you don't want to do that. I shouldn't say landlocked. I don't know if maybe they do have access to another road. But you took that access away. Yeah, you've taken that access away. And that's probably, I don't know of another one that they use, to be honest with you. So. The concrete's done on Locust Shop, the salt shed up there. We are gonna have to take the old one down. We do have to get an asbestos inspection. I don't suspect there is anything in it. There's a chance it's in the tar paper underneath the shingles. If there is, then that has to be removed by a certified contractor. And then we can take the rest of the building down. I don't think there's anything in there. We've got a quote, I think it's just shy of $900 to have them come up and test it and tell us there's nothing wrong with it, but the other two quotes were over 2,000, so but it is something you have to do, any standing structure. We do it with our bridges, and everything older than 1970 has been inspected for asbestos, so we have the reports on those. We do have one that has asbestos in it. And that bridge has really not in any threat of needing to come down in a long time, but it does exist. So out of everything older than 1970, you have one. And it's up in Highland Township. It goes into McKee County, and it's on the Quandale Road. But it's the only one older than 1970. When we did that, I tried to have the board do everything older than 1980, but they didn't want to go that new. They kicked it back to 1970, and so anything newer than 1970, you would have to have it re-inspected because they have not been done.
So there is probability there might be a couple other structures that between 70 and 80 that.
There's a chance, but by the 70s, asbestos was really
Yeah.
not used a lot. I mean, but it is still used. I mean, if you don't disturb it, it's some wonderful stuff. You just don't want to get it airborne. If it gets airborne, then it's really, really bad. But if you can keep it contained, I mean, I don't know, if the courthouse had any piping?
No, but, well, it has piping, yes, but it's any of it.
The insulation, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think some of that probably.
Historically, but typically you just retape them up and leave it in place and.
Leave it.
Well, if it's.
We've been hauling dirt for a couple of days out there on 14 last week, I think.
Mhm.
On that, how many? That looks like there's a lot of dirt gonna be required there.
Mhm. Yep, it's. Lord, this is the time to do it and do it right. Get it out there.
Once you dump a load, it doesn't go
Oh,
very.
no, about it, especially on the mill side of that is gonna take a.
Yeah.
How far back are we gonna take it?
We'll probably go to the right of way line. I mean, slope out. We did get a little extra right away. Extension is not short.
Oh, that's that's a lot of fill. You could probably use most of town line, most of Hanover to try to.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of fill there, but yeah, there's a lot of material in Conover that could go, a lot. But that's a whole nother project when it starts. So,
Will you have, back to this Cornhole Road, will you have, that might know that because of this other thing, that would be good to get the retracement done?
yeah,
A higher priority than just.
yeah, there's that. Andy's got us working on another one. There's access of a road that we don't really do anything with it. It's a driveway for, if you went out there and looked at it, you'd say this is somebody's driveway, but it's field access, and there's a dispute between the neighbors as to where the road sits and where their access is. working with Andy to get that squared away. It's more of a legal issue for them to just clean up, but these show up, and that's just what we have to realize.
That's why it's good to do this parsonage right now before you get a new owner. And if they get in a fight with the neighbor, then at least you're out of it.
Yeah, how do we go about vacating?
You'll set a public hearing.
On Monday.
One week, we'll do the one for the parsonage, and, cause I'll have to put it on the agenda, but this Horn Hollow Road one, I think you should wait till you get this Lucy Schempp to give her side of it and actually request the vacation.
Yep.
And then only the following week, you can start by setting a public hearing and finding out from Isaac how long it's gonna take or whatever.
You don't have to wait for an official request to vacate. You find a road you want to get rid of, you guys can vacate it any time when you want. But it's usually easier when you have a formal request to have that done. And then you hold your public hearing and hear whatever sides you end up hearing. Sometimes there's dispute, sometimes there's not.
How many sections of road are out there like this?
Hundreds.
There's
All the line, like I said, on the stage road, we had 5 alignments going through there. We didn't know which one we sat on. We had no idea. We knew where the road was, but we don't know what alignment we followed. And there was a bridge sitting there that's got a big tree about this big around growing it. That was our bridge still, and we got rid of it.
I only remember one where where the board has scheduled the public hearing and then decided not to vacate it. Now, is that one in Bluffton where they wanted that other people wanted access to the backside of their farm that way?
And they did that like,
That one a couple of years ago.
well, we were gonna vacate a lot of stuff in Bluffton. The platted. I think Monique's cleaned up. But those platted ones, they get uglier. Bluffton, I will tell you, if someone comes in and wants you to clean up Bluffton, good luck, because it's a mess. The way the surveys came in, when you get to the west line, it doesn't work. And, because it just really got ugly as to who was gonna get what, where the lines were. So we left it alone.
Further away you get from the pin, the worse it gets.
Yep. And a lot of that is when they surveyed back in the day, they were using chains, and you had to have a guy pulling with the right tension and the right temperatures. And today we walk out there and we are within.
It's go over the old chain and then the nail. So
they held it straight.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do. The chain stays flat.
You need your own slacker along there.
Yeah.
Screw things up.
Yeah, don't follow the ground. You hold it level. And it's just, we're much more precise today, and that's just the way it is. But you make it work. There's above Freeport, where the power line comes across, there's 3 government corners up there. And depending on which direction you come in, you better use the right one or it's not gonna work for you at all. And that's just the way it is. There's not just one nice point. So. All right, anything else?
I understand this is your last Monday with us in this room. I
Yeah.
want to thank you again for your service.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Not every day was fun, but most days.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you.
Consent agenda.
Just have the minutes and the claims site.
what's that? BFS freedom vote scan? Is that, so that's your deal?
Voting equipment, yeah,
Okay.
that's, not half of it, that's the one council out. Then we have to do yes, probably next year, in the next year's budget later this time, we're gonna get the handicap accessible machines too have to be replaced, because it's kind of a package deal, so.
So what's the price on that? How many
Was there 12 units here?
12 units.
12 units?
Yeah, we have 12 voting precincts, yeah.
Okay.
So how many elections do we have coming up in November?
Just the city school election is in November, so it's technically, we have 8 cities and 6 school districts. Will be Almaquee, Postville, Southwind, Turkey Valley, Howard Wind, and then Decorah. Only Decorah and Southwind are completely in, it's not even completely. Decorah, actually, we have, I think, 2 voters that live in Almaquee County that are actually in the Decorah School District, so.
We don't get none from Minnesota from,
No,
no,
school districts don't cross
Throughout
state
state
lines,
lines?
no. But they can cross county lines. We have a lot of those.
yeah.
So that's,
School elections have changed a lot. We're killing time here anyway. Because then when I started as auditor, we were still doing, they had 3-year terms. And so we had school elections every September. Every year we had a school election in September because they had these 3 years.
Cycling someone,
Yeah, yeah, and so
Possibility.
then they switched them to 4-year terms and put them in the odd number years always.
Okay.
And then it was odd years in September. And then in 2019, they switched it and moved the school election to the same day as the city elections, so that we only have to run one election on odd numbered years, yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense.
It does actually make a lot of sense, because it's, yeah,
Cost effective.
Yeah.
Simple.
it's cost effective. It makes the election much more complex because you have someone that votes in, say, Calmer. And so I have to have ballots there to people who live in the city of Calmer or in the rural area or in the city of Fort Atkinson or the city of Jackson Junction. Plus then if you live in a rural area, do you live in Southland School District or Turkey Valley School District or Decorah School District? So then they have about 8 different ballots there. I gotta make sure everybody gets the right ballot, but it gets a little more complex that way, but at least we only have to set up and hire people to sit there one time. So
You get better election turnout too.
you do. Yeah. That's in one of the budget bills, I think it was, that passed the legislature this year. Another thing they did, which I think was a good idea, is they made it so bond elections had to happen at the November election time. So they can't call a separate special election for that bond issue.
that's only every 2 years now.
Every 2 years for
Yeah.
city and school. Yeah.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? None, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries unanimous. Do you have any committee reports?
We had a Bear Creek watershed inspection tour thing this week. And it came up about in evaluating the projects, there's some brush and stuff growing in road ditches and stuff on that. Is that something, and they were wondering, in the past, the county has taken extra effort to make sure that those were cut, mowed with weeds, brush on them. Is that something we're gonna continue to do, or does that go back to the?
Can you ask that question a little bit louder?
Well, the Bear Creek watershed, there's projects where those big earthen roads and dams and whatever, but detention areas. The county has taken care of doing extra mowing as far as keeping the brush and invasive weeds and stuff off of that
I don't know why not, though, I mean, it's gonna do what we're
Which is
doing.
gonna be a wider swath.
Yeah.
Than typical. So, they were gonna send me a proposal or just a outline of what they'd like to have done or basis. Is it every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, they take care of that or not?
Is it within the right of way?
It is in the right of way, yeah. Now, I don't know if they're wanting us to go off the right of way to do that, but that would be a whole different deal, I would expect.
I would say
That's staying right, that ain't our obligation, that's their, yeah. Your owners,
Or if it's the
landowner, that's not our,
If it's in the right of way, I don't see an issue.
you know, I mean, if we've been doing it,
Yeah, but there are bushes and stuff going on now.
so then they haven't been doing it.
Well, I mean, there's,
That's the problem.
everywhere you look.
It hasn't been getting done.
everywhere you look.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of,
It just didn't happen.
1,000 times 2 miles.
There's a lot of places that that's
Dishes.
getting done.
So, anyway, I think the amount of money that's invested in those structures, we probably should have a priority to make sure they get a regular mowing.
Well, it's taken care of the way it's supposed to be. You're gonna find your issues before they become bigger.
Bigger issues, yeah.
I think we need to.
I think Mark started on this one.
There's
Oh,
one
there is.
started.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I had a power update. We had, probably start in a couple weeks. They flagged all the locations out and, everything's we're running on schedule. Should hopefully be done by, if everything goes, the end of the year, be up and running. Yeah, we're, where states like this, they're gonna be not to slow them down. But yeah, everything looks good. and
What was the total cost of the towers?
3.2 million on the 4 towers. That was reusing 2 of the deals and putting 2 new. We were gonna go with microwaves, but now they're going and putting in cable or whatever, so I think they're gonna do what Elmer was it? I didn't get the whole detail on that, but maybe. Oh, that was an air conditioning unit. They were gonna, or heating unit, they were gonna sell the Kelmer, buy a new one, because they could utilize that one, and we'd have all new ones at all 4 instead of moving the one unit, so that's.
And by changing it from microwave to cable,
Reduce the cost. It was like 300,000, but then most of you running cable to it eats up that dollar, so I mean, it's a wash for, yeah. But if you got like a windstorm, you're more apt to keep your communication going rather than maybe losing it with the microwave system.
I had RC&D last week in Postville, and they just received a $750,000 grant for scenic byways. It's a huge, huge grant awarded. So congrats to them for the work they do. We've all got solid waste tonight at 5. Housing trust fund is tomorrow. I'm holding the opioid task force meeting here at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And behavioral health this Thursday.
That opioid meeting is the one you've been putting the committee together
Mhm.
for?
Yep.
Well,
And,
did you end up getting-
registration's open for ISAC conference for August, so you guys can register now. That's it.
Who all did you get? And
Yeah.
On that
Yep,
committee?
yep. Police department, sheriff's department, public health, emergency management, behavioral health, helping services. Andy Vandermountain, county attorney. That's who we're starting with. And that group may choose to add some other members, maybe a family member or a recovered addict. I don't know. This is just the first meeting to decide what's the best way, the most effective way to use the money for the county. And there's a Veterans Appreciation Day here in the annex Thursday afternoon, is that 4 to 7, do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's for veterans.
For veterans,
Yeah.
but what time?
I think it,
I think that.
100%.
4 to 7?
I think
That sounds like, I remember the email saying. I did a, visit to the DHS building out there last week. Schedule a time when John Halverson was going out to do maintenance work in an early morning hour, not to disturb anything, and so we could really look around the whole place. And we may want to take a secondary look at that whole thing. That it's a deceiving building, even though it's cost us quite a bit. There is, when you see it from the highway driving by, you would realize that's a 7,248 square foot building. On two floors, built in 1970s. I went to the Iowa Department of Transportation and got a copy of the original floor plans, which I've got that available. We may want to start looking at it and seeing what maybe the highest and best use, maybe some of what our options may be on that facility. It's not being, from a casual look, not talking to anybody on the staff, it looks like it may be 40% used, 50% used, as from a facility standpoint. But I would say that it would be counterproductive to look at the spectrum space at 700 square feet for $2,500 or 700 square feet for $2,700 for a total of $1,400 for $5,200. When DHS has been used to living in 7,000 square feet.
Yeah, that ain't.
So I think we have something entirely different that we need to look at in a much different light. And I'll shoot the floor plans out. They come from the 1970s. There's been a few changes made. There's handicap bathrooms have been added for the first floor. There is no elevator. There's only a stairway. That's the bottom level is serviced from a lower level driveway that goes around to the lower level. The upper level, of course, comes in, from the top in a parking space up there. It's shared services with DOT next door with sewer and water. That seems not to have been any significant problem.
Recently, they used to have trouble.
Yeah.
We had sewer problems there
With
many times because they were dumping in the shop was getting contaminated wastewater, oil and gasoline or whatever, diesel fuel, just getting into the
sewer system.
and having issues with the septic tanks not working.
Yeah, I think we're past, seems we're past that.
Yes, it's been several years since we've had that
Currently,
issue.
there's a complaint over the taste of the water, but I said, I don't know.
I think they have Culligan
Yeah.
provide bottled water for the drinking just because they don't like the taste of it.
You'll get that with well water. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just no matter where you're at as well. But that seems to be, I think it's obvious that we need to we gotta look at it.
Are they just using the upper floor?
No, there seems to always be if we have space, we fill it, in just a general sense. And so there's a lot of stuff scattered throughout both floors of that building. And, there's a lot of there's occupied workstations and workstations you can see that aren't occupied, obviously. There's no computer. There's no obvious sign of life.
They have a lot of staff that are only there like one day a week or something. And so, but yeah, because they're out visiting, they're case managers, so they're out seeing their case clients. And so they probably take up more room than they need to, because if you have somebody there's once a week, do they really need their own desk, or could, you share with somebody?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you have that much space, you use it, yeah.
So if you drive by there, you rarely see cars because you only see from 52, the upper level, whereas a lower level parking area, there's always cars parked there.
I guess I didn't know that existed.
Oh, I know, there's a whole lower level, that's a 3+ acre site. And if that whole lower level will have 4 to 6 Iowa State cars parked there overnight, left there. So it's hard to get a head count, and I didn't want to go in and disturb anything and make any overtures yet. So that's why I went up there at 6 a.m. in the morning to go see it when John was changing light bulbs.
Who pays the utilities on that?
We pay everything and then we submit to the state. The state reimburses. They reimburse a portion based on the work that's being done as at the upper level of DHS. That's the statewide level. So it's usually 40 to 50% of the expenses the state reimburses. And then the rest, we have to divide up between the other 4 counties and us. And the agreement we have with the other 4 counties is they each pay 10% and we pay 60%. I don't think that's representative of the share of the work, but I think at the time that agreement was drawn up, the board at that time thought it was better to have those people working in our community than to have them working in West Union or in Fresco or something. And so they took a lower percentage to get the people to come here for their daily work.
Then they don't even come to town.
And that right now, that a lot of them maybe don't even come to town if they live, especially if they live south of Detroit.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunity there for us to try to make better use of our facility.
I think a conversation with the director is absolutely essential to
Oh, that,
We're-
but it's too early. It's too premature for that.
here.
It's too premature for that.
I figured that I don't think they would like the Spectrum space just because of how small it was. Cause at one point we were trying to move them in. Transit was thinking about relocating their office, which is that,
The end.
the newer part.
Hospital.
Yeah, and they came and looked at it and they're like, no, this is way too small. And so and then it worked out that Transit stayed anyway, so.
That's more than 700 square feet that end is, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I assumed that they wouldn't want the Spectrum space, but I figured there's no
Yeah.
trouble looking into it at least.
No. It wouldn't be near.
But going from a $38,000 expense to a $60+ $60,000
Yeah.
expense doesn't make,
Yeah,
doesn't seem like.
if it was one of the spaces at Spectrum, you might,
Yeah,
that would have
for
been,
30,000 a year, it would, yeah.
but if you need both, and then that maybe isn't even enough, that doesn't really help you.
No.
We're paying a fairly significant bill for the phone service, internet out there.
That is one of the biggest bills is the phone service. They have whatever it is, 17 lines or whatever there.
It's $1,200.
Yeah, and we pay less than that for all of the courthouse and Smith building. And so if we could get fiber there or a way to get connected so that we could connect them and use our current phone system, we would cut that bill and probably down to about 10 or 15%.
There is an answer for that. I talked to John Luke in it last week. Ironically, John worked in that office for Iowa DOT back in the early days as a intern in the engineer's office when it was the engineer's office. And he said, we have fiber out to the 911 tower on 9. And it would be simple to go straight across with a signal from the 911 tower to that building, and we could cut that phone cost down significantly.
Like a site-to-site,
Site-to-site connection and tie that together. So that's what we're looking into, no matter what, because we already have.
that's one of the biggest expenses, other than obviously the building capital expenses, like putting we've had boiler issues and furnace issues and roof issues and parking lot issues there, but yeah.
What's the end date on that contract between the counties for what % we all pay?
There is no end date. It just
Maybe
is.
it can be renegotiated.
It could be renegotiated. I think you're gonna have trouble because the other 4 counties aren't gonna want to pay more.
Well, we can
Or
adjust
future
it
discussion.
just to keep it on time, so Isaac's a busy man.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda, Isaac Wiltgen, Assistant County Engineer, contract for Inc.
Yeah, I guess,
We are super happy that you are signing this.
yeah, I think we're excited as well.
So I emailed it out, so everyone could see it ahead of time. And there isn't any surprises in there that I saw. I mean, we would put him on the salary scale where he would be as starting as the engineer, so
On item 9 on the contract, it says this contract may be amended, revised, renewed, or extended at any time only by written approval of board and the engineer by the full board or by 2/5.
It'd be 2/5, or
Okay.
3/5.
3/5,
yeah.
3/5, same as it said earlier.
Yeah.
And then, the only other thing I saw is on the last page where you all sign, you wanted to say party of the first part instead of part of the first part.
Yeah. I'm just gonna break that in,
Thank you.
and my name is wrong.
And this, but I'm just saying this for the public's information, this fulfills our requirement with the DOT to make sure we have a certified engineer, registered certified engineer in place for the, in between the current engineer and the next one. Thank you, Isaac.
We have in the past sometimes, I think it's happened a couple times, where one of our neighboring counties, their engineer left. And so they have had agreements with Winneshiek County to have our engineer fill in.
Because of the state requirements.
Because of the state requirements, so we're lucky to have someone on staff that can actually qualify their own, so.
Yeah, the biggest thing, I guess, communication. Any if you have questions or concerns, just feel free to reach out to me. Vice versa, I'll reach out to you, so. Communication is a big thing, I think, so.
You want to make a motion on that?
I would move to approve the temporary contract with Isaac Wiltgen as our interim engineer for the Winneshiek County.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
We got a lot of stuff on the design board.
Thank
so I think-
Thank you.
Yeah, actually,
No.
first week in July, we got 2 bridges that are due to the DOT or check plan stage for the projects for next year.
What's that one,
One over by Ridgeway over the Turkey River to 20th, I believe, 230th.
whatever, yeah.
And then, the other one's on Centennial Road, Bridge 5.
Oh, okay.
And then actually, one more is, down on B68. There's a bridge there now, but we're gonna put a box culvert in. It's in the city of Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Between Jackson and Walker.
Yep.
Is that the one that's on the state route where we?
It's, well, B68 was a state road, but it's now under county jurisdiction.
Yes, was there resolve over that 3 boxes versus 2?
Yeah, I talked to the DOT or a DNR and I got them convinced to do it 12 by 10, so just took a little convincing, but.
Deal.
Get you a copy of this.
Yeah.
It's been asked.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thanks. Yep, thanks everyone.
Next on the agenda, 1020 miscellaneous RFP for financial analysis of IRVM program.
What you take lead on that, that's what the. Yeah,
This was in response to having somebody do an analysis of the actual costs and projected cost or savings of the program going forward. Andy put together, county attorney put together this. I just basically a slight modification, but it is, goes out there and is due back in June, towards the end of June,
Did we all get a copy? of
Friday,
that?
June 30th. He emailed it out to everybody. So anyway, I think it looks good. And, you know, if anyone had a chance to look it over.
What's the date on that email? Do you have it, Steve? I was looking for this.
We gotta decide what dollar figure we want to spend or what,
Well,
come back
you know-
with different analysis or what.
We have all the numbers we need. group,
Well-
but it makes money over time. So
I
not
think
for,
the-
for after here.
think that what they're asking for is a bid.
Just a bid to see
Bids,
what's,
to
Did
see
you
what.
send it or did Mark? You did.
Well, he did. It was right after that meeting. Yeah.
Do a search and find it.
Andy's email was on the 5th.
And you aren't, it's very explicitly stipulated that you aren't obligated to accept any of the bids. So
No.
if the bids all come back higher than what your amount you want to spend, then you just don't do any of them.
Kind of like a sound system.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Is that a public record?
So I guess I would make a motion to proceed with offering the looking for bid.
Is that a motion?
That motion. As in,
Then the motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Felix. Did you see, did you see or not see any changes you wanted to make to that RFP from what you saw of it?
I had,
They were earlier changes.
yeah, when we were looking at it, it was basically a minor one, just kind of spelled out utilizing the information.
Right, so Monday is the 5th from last week. Last Monday is basically, that's the same document, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, but is it posted this? It's the one that's still in place.
Yeah.
This is the one with the changes made.
This would be, yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes on 4-1. Next up under miscellaneous, the cigarette and tobacco permits.
So the places that sell products outside incorporated cities have to apply through the county. We have 5 of them. Country Express for Winneshiek, or Farmers Wind Co-op, Highland General Store in Highlandville, Harvest Farm Campground up by Kendall Billet, or the Zipper in Pastina, and Bluffton Campground in Bluffton. So they have to pay their fees and go through us to get these.
Someone want to take action?
I'd second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the cigarette and tobacco permits. Any further discussion? None, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Next up under miscellaneous, discuss county engineer hiring process and board supervisor representatives. And maybe we could just carry this right out. And I guess that way, if we have any questions, we can ask him. What, and I'll just state what we, since I was on the city council, we had to replace every person in Ocean within like a three-year period. And what we did there is when we have the applicants, we always numbered the applicants, you know, for example, 1 through 5. So when we have any public discussion, we just refer to the applicants as the number that was issued to them. Is that something kind of what you're thinking, Andy?
Well, I think you need to give the applicants the option to remain confidential. It's a personnel issue, but they are the only ones who can make that call. So I think until you hear from them, one side of that or the other, I think the numbering system is the way to go.
Okay.
You know, when you reach the point where you're talking about interviews and that type of thing, yeah, at that point, you're going to ask them, you know, do you want your interview in public? Do you want your name out there? And, you may have some that go both ways.
And I haven't read all these details, but I think that the idea is that you only put one or two of you on the initial committee, is that right? To get them narrowed down. I mean, if you have 15 applicants, but you're gonna only issue 5, then they could.
But to be clear, I think whoever is on that committee, those are not the only people to see all of the applications out.
No.
Everybody sees every application, and, you know, if you've got 15 applications, you've got numbers 1 through 15. You can think through how you want to narrow that down to interview your 3 or 4 applicants, or however many you decide on. One way that you could do it, and then I could help you with that, is each of you could rank your applicants 1 through 15 in the order you
That's what we do.
And we could rank choice then to say, okay, these 3 are the highest 3, or these 5 are your highest 3. That's 5, excuse me. But anyway, that might be an option, but I think that's something that you collectively could decide. One, when you see how many applicants you actually have.
Yeah.
And wouldn't we form an advisory committee too, that would also go through those applicants to help us through this
I
process?
think that you may want, I don't know that I would call it an advisory committee, but you may want an engineer from another county who could review the qualifications and make sure that every requirement that you need for someone to submit bids through DOT and so on is checked, that they meet all of the requirements of the state in order to qualify to be a county engineer. I get a little hesitant when you start signing advisory people, because ultimately the decision to hire is the 5 of you. It's not anyone else's.
It was just the
responsibility.
terminology used by the DOT.
Right. So I mean, I think you may want someone to review those applications and confirm that the requirements are met, but, beyond that, I really think that your committee, is going to need to go through the job description that you already have, get that to you as a full board to approve, and to get advertising lined up, and to select places to advertise, and make sure that the rest of the board is aware of those decisions, and to get input from the rest of the board if they feel that there's, other places to advertise or changes to make in that job description. Because quite frankly, once the ads go out, it's, the process becomes pretty simple. It's going to come to Ben's office. Ben's going to share the applications at the deadline with everybody. And the next step is going to be how many are you going to select? How are you going to move forward with interviews? And you may want to, I think there were some issues on that email that I sent out. One of the bullet points talked about, it might be advisable for the board to establish a set of guidelines about the hiring process for themselves. How many candidates they're going to interview, time frame for soliciting applications, scheduling interviews, that type of thing. And that might be more of a full board discussion, obviously, than the committee that's appointed.
And what are our requirements for what 14 of us have to be in closed session because of the personnel issue?
The choice of closed session is up to the applicant, not up to you. So at this point in time, like we talked a little earlier, I think I would treat every applicant as a numbered application rather than by name and location, until that person makes clear that their information may be made public or they prefer to keep it confidential.
Absolutely.
It's not
Yeah.
your decision to close the session because of it. But I think until you have that information, you need to.
And
Could we ask that on the application? I mean, can that be one of the questions? Would you like this to be
We can't.
considered?
I think that's what we did when, the board retired and there were applications for sheriff. It was the same type of thing. Until we had the firm answer on that, it was, those names were not released.
and when it comes time for the interview process, one of the things we did is we got together as a full council, put together the whole questionnaire sheet. We all agreed on all the questions that were going to be asked. And one way, in order to not have it done at an open meeting, on the one, it was pretty easy because one of the council members was applying for the job, so he just abstained from it. So then we just had two separate groups with the two council members in one room, two council members in a different room, and we just swapped the interviewees back and forth, and they all answered the same questions to both groups. And then the next one, for one of the other spots, was one of the council members just took himself out of that and took up on the other four. And I don't expect anybody to sit out on this deal, but I mean, I don't know.
If you have someone, I'm gonna think through this. If you have someone who wants their information to remain confidential, I don't think it matters whether you're split into two groups or doing this as one. If you look at the materials DOT sent out, there are some questions, suggested outline of questions that you might want to review. You may want to use some, most, all of those. And that may help you with outlining what the interview process looks like amongst the five of you. I have seen the process that you're talking about. In fact, I think, last, chief of police hire in Decorah did something similar to that. I don't know how necessary it is when someone tells you, I want this to be confidential, or I want this to be an open meeting, because at that point, you're free to sit in with the five of you and ask the questions, however they come up.
Okay.
So,
Sometimes I think there's some value to everybody hearing the same response.
Yeah.
That's just,
so just to outline, if I made, the first thing they should do is be reviewing the job description of the current job description, and that can be all done as during open meeting, and kind of start thinking about timeline, and then if contacting at least one other county engineer to help review the applications when they come in. That would be the starting points, it seems like.
and then, that engineer could be contacted, I would think, even after the ads go out, because you're gonna have some time to line up before you start getting applications in.
And a DOT representative.
Yeah.
Our county policy requires at least 2 weeks, and then in the official newspapers and the posting on the bulletin board. And then they have some minimum requirements on this procedure sheet. So then you have to decide if there are other places that you'll want to send.
I think it would be helpful to identify the date at which we all would like to see a new engineer in place, a starting date, and work back from it. So we can set up a timeline, so we're all working off the same timeline. So the sooner we can get this done, the better.
What was the date again that the DOT agreed that Isaac could be the engineer officer?
June 24th until
Well,
Start.
I don't I don't recall off the top of my head. It was,
I think you
I
sent
think-
it, though, did you not?
yeah, I don't,
They did have a date.
Yeah.
I think there was a deadline for getting an interim.
Yes,
Is there a deadline for?
I don't remember a
like,
deadline
new
for his
hire
term.
once we
Yeah,
get
there
hired,
was,
Please?
the interim could cover current projects. So it doesn't jeopardize anything we have currently in the works. But they didn't want to accept any, any new projects for letting until we had an engineer in place.
So when
And so-
early fall.
Yeah, it was sometime this fall that we needed to have, otherwise, I mean, if you don't, you just can't let in any projects, which is, you get behind. It wasn't a firm deadline, but it was a deadline
That's, yeah.
to have someone in place before the next letting, which was this fall. So
Early October.
Wasn't there a caveat there where they expressed because he is licensed that there was,
that he could oversee our ongoing projects. So you have to have a licensed engineer,
he's a PD.
otherwise we'd have to, the 24th, stop any current projects.
That's all covered.
Or
So,
you'd
but
have,
we're okay with that.
or you'd have to sign a 2080 agreement.
With another
a different
county to-
county.
Have someone look over the project.
But I think realistically, we should say September 1.
One, yeah.
Because it could be a failed search. You have to
I think that whatever that timing was, it had to do with like, you have projects that you may want to let in December and those plans are due to the DOT 60 days ahead of that or whatever it is. And so that established the date that a new actual engineer had to sign off on submitting them for letting or something. So I don't remember the exact date, but I remember that being described in one of Andy's emails.
maybe it should be like August, middle of August.
We can't, we're not gonna get through this process that quick, I don't believe. If we're gonna take 60 days, the minimum 90 days is probably more realistic. You're not gonna get through this entire process that fast.
And you need to keep in mind that the person that you hire
Has to look there.
may have.
Yeah.
Have to give their,
Yes, looking, and I don't even think 1st of September is
probably October 1st.
This October 1st might be more realistic. This is not,
Cause it's gonna take,
You know, I've been
advertised for 30 days.
I've spent 18 years in personnel and I've been down a lot of different hiring routes. I don't see it happening that quick.
You also kind of have to worry about, you had that clause in lease contract that you could retain him longer. I mean, you don't know if you choose someone,
Exactly.
2 weeks notice might not be enough.
Well, I'm talking when the offer needs to be made.
Yeah.
Not to have them on board.
Yeah.
So I would say it shouldn't be any later than September 1st. You have to have the offer. And that's why I said make the
So I
offer.
think for now, like maybe the short-term goal is by the end of the month, you have the job description reviewed and your hot timeline figured out so that we can get this going.
Going by the 1st of July.
I would add, I think the advertising should be ready to go by July 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything
You
should go
know,
on.
then you could, seems to me, potentially could have applications in by early August and have interviews completed by the 1st of September and offer made by
September.
Mid-September.
September.
I think those are pretty good goals.
Reasonable timeline there.
So if you try to target the 26th or whatever that last meeting in June, 26th as the day that you approve your advertising plan, that would give us then the following week. to
And
start
job
getting it.
description.
Yeah, that gives you two weeks to kind of figure out where all you want to advertise it and get the job description ready and the wording on the advertisement ready.
Sounds reasonable.
I'll make a note to at least make sure it's on the agenda that day, but, there will need to be a lot of
Yes. I'd say
coordination
we
between now and
We
then.
should definitely all read through this week and next
Yeah,
Monday come forward with what we think should be put on there.
Monday, we
Gives
can
us an
approve the
extra
job
week to
description.
Finalize exactly what we.
Put a work session on the agenda for next week for this.
Next 2 weeks, engineer.
The current job description I sent to you about 9 o'clock this morning, so you have what we are currently using. And I think it's probably pretty up to date.
Is that the Conley job description?
This is the one we've had. I don't know if Conley put it together or.
Conley did put one together in their package for us. That they did.
Connery, yeah.
Conjuring.
And I can double check. I didn't look at the one Andy sent out, but I'll double check because Lynn does have all of the country ones, so.
This one came from Lee, so.
So you'll send everyone then?
If the one Andy sent isn't the Condry one, we'll get it sent here in the next couple days, but I
They're
do
the-
probably is.
DOT sent us 5 job descriptions.
Right.
But the one that Condrey had was submitted by Lee to Condrey during that whole process. So I think the one you gave us is the one that we're working.
That's the job description that Connery made from all of their investigation. I mean, they use Lee's plus with their own expertise to wade through that. I don't know
Then we have to
exactly.
make sure that
But we need to make sure it's
everything that
DOT.
the DOT
Yeah,
requires
DOT
also.
requires, yeah.
And I reviewed the 5, but I didn't have time to compare them, but I will do so.
So for Monday.
The next 2 Mondays, we'll plan to have an agenda item that has an engineering hiring plan, and hopefully next week you can finalize, or at least be pretty close, at least on the job description portion, and then you can talk about that timeline a little more, and I don't know, Andy probably should be involved in the
Mhm.
wording of that ad specifically, so.
I attached the last page of,
Mhm.
what I sent to you by email has 3, suggested advertisements by DOT. And my thought would be you might want to appoint a couple people. I'm happy to work with them to put it together, but at least to start putting language in the ad together, because that's something that, if you next Monday decide, hey, the job description's ready and the ad's ready, I think there's, you're also gonna need to discuss compensation range. Add that to your list. But I think if you get to that point, you can get the ad out by, the 22nd, 23rd of June. It might improve your timetable for fall.
And the DOT suggested too in their information to us that in their hiring of a county engineer guide, that we put the salary range in the advertisements, that it saves time for everybody.
That's typical.
I think that
And it's not.
unless something else is going to affect that you have the range already established in the Condry report. I mean, you have a starting engineer range, which is what Isaac will be at with this temporary one, and then you have years of service steps. And so I think your range is that range. Now, whether you hire someone who's already been serving as a county engineer in another county, so you want to hire them recognizing those years and put them in at a certain number of steps, then that would be available. But I think the numbers themselves are already
In place.
We all know them.
Yeah.
I'm saying in the advertisement.
Right.
Just send me those. I'll go back through, I'll get the 3 ads kind of put together for Winneshiek County purposes, send them out to you, and if you guys, choose to use one of those, fine. If you've got some changes that you want made, we'll get them modified. Thinking there may be a possibility that next week, Monday's work session takes care of the issues to the point that
Yeah, we'll be
starting to
Get started advertising.
And it would be good because of the fact that because of the way our
4th of July.
Fourth of July.
and the schedule of the 4th of July and getting advertisements in the paper, it's not like you get them in.
Right.
If you decide Monday, it's not gonna be in Tuesday's paper, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we assigning you as our point person?
I think she was looking at you.
I was looking at you.
I think that the application should go to the auditor's office.
Yes, and that's pretty
But if
standard.
you said, I highlighted the second bullet point, as it seems to me that you need a point person from the Board of Supervisors to coordinate the advertising and to identify the issues the full board needs to be decide prior to an
I
advertising.
think that if we have the options for ads in front of you next week,
Yeah.
that you as a board can make that decision.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's a lot better as a full board decision to discuss that.
no, I was just answering
Reading
your,
that.
we're just reading what you had said in your email to us, Andy. So I'm asking, can we consider you the point person for the Board of Supervisors for this
I think
process?
if you read it fully, it says the board should designate one of their members for the process.
But
So,
if we're all getting together and discussing it, that's pretty much takes care of the point.
At some point in time, you're gonna need to have somebody reach out to
Yeah.
some of the advisory people to talk about whether or not your applicants meet the qualifications, should they?
Yeah.
Because I think there are some in visiting Lee early on in this process. I've got the list written somewhere, but there are some qualifications that are, I won't say they're optional, but they need to be done for bridge certification, for example. Some other issues that, you know, a person may not come in with, but could get qualified for rather quickly. So, you know, where they stand and what the process would be to get where they need to be is something that someone outside of this room probably needs to address.
and
So
you
it
have
might
to
be
give calls to people to serve on guidance for us. Fayette County or Alameda County is a neighboring county.
I have a relationship with one of the other local county engineers. If he is not going to apply, I'll approach him and ask him if that's something in his wheelhouse that he'd be willing to do.
Sure.
And I'll work back next week on that.
And I'd be happy to check with the ones I know too.
I think check with them and we'll see. No, might want to apply for this job.
But that's key.
These guys won't be.
That's key. That has to be qualified.
Yes.
So I don't think we decided anything right now.
Yes, and I'll send that. I
Under
will
the
send the
direction
signed
of
into
point number
agreement
one.
down to DOT also, so they are aware that you have
Okay.
your license PV.
Could you speak louder, please?
Then I would send a copy of the interim contract out to the DOT.
Okay, well, I think we got that pretty much.
We didn't, but I think it's a little bit confusing right now. So are we only contacting the one that you have a relationship
No,
with,
I see.
or?
He was just
Just wanna make it
going to ask
clear.
questions, and that's for down the road once we.
That's for down the road.
I volunteered to try and reach out to one that I know personally to see if he's not interested in applying.
Good.
If in fact, then he might be an option for reviewing the DOT requirements as a professional engineer.
Right, and I'm saying the same thing about two others that I know, that I'd
Well,
be happy
like
to
I
reach
said,
out.
Shirley, that's for down the road when we get the
You
application.
get the application.
Then we will
Well,
probably
in contact.
someone that wants. That have.
You're not reaching out yet.
Well, I think you probably want this person lined up for when your application deadline comes up.
Yeah.
That's right.
Between that and your meeting to decide who you're in. All two or three of them and say, hey, is this something you're willing to do? when the time comes?
We could do that.
I would think that Steve should reach out to his person and Shirley could reach out to her too and just say,
When that,
gathering names of people that might be willing to do this. So we can drop that in place when it comes.
If one of them happens to be on vacation when that time
Well,
comes,
that's true.
then you've got the other one.
So,
which is very likely, yeah.
do we need a motion or is that just an agreement then?
I think that's just agreement.
Okay,
Next week, we've got a work session.
so we will both reached out to
Does anyone have any other questions for Andy, or you have anything else for us?
I'm just, thinking about Steve's comment about the work session. I think I'd put an action item on there, a potential action item. If you have consensus on everything, I'd have something on the agenda to take action. If you're ready to go, why wait?
Yep.
I don't have anything else for you folks.
We all got I have one question while you're here. We all got a letter on the 10th, June 10th, from Pergita Mead asking about recording of meetings again. Did you get a chance to read through that?
I saw it, I had not.
Okay, could we have this on the agenda again for your advice on it or something?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I just saw that this morning, so I thought we'd just ask you about it while you're here.
That's it. You good to go, Andy?
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
I just said Lori dropped off, so, on the consent agenda, Mark had made the motion, so if there would be any interest in amending that to include this liquor license that came in this morning for Luna Valley Farms, we could add that, get that done and make the amendment.
Okay, I'll second that.
And I'll just consider that a friendly amendment.
Sounds good.
We go, I'm gonna do a land.
All five.
So it's at the
Yeah, the
landfill.
land, yeah.
5 o'clock, right?
In the maintenance shop.
Not out in the, not out in the.
No,
Not in the scale house.
Might get a little taller in there.
Or any of the containers.
Tony's gonna come and sit with the emergency management exercise you're doing here, so if you want to tell me who's gonna make the motion and second to adjourn later.
I'll second.
It's not unanimous, tell me afterwards.
I think it's unanimous.
That one usually goes pretty.
That one's pretty easy, yeah.
I think we'll just
I
go
think
through
that's a
landfill.
guarantee.
So anybody will come up here, get yourself all prepared.
So just in a couple minutes, you guys want to take a break?
I do. I think they're both taken.
Okay, if I'm gonna have to.
I'm gonna move. Yeah.
Okay, but is there anybody left online? I'm gonna have to disconnect in order to project. Does that make sense?
I'll let you do whatever you need to do.
That's fine. Checked a little bit before I came down, and I think it was just me that was online, so.
I think you can leave that on, it's just that you won't see it.
Oh, okay.
You'll just unplug the HDMI cable, that way the people that are online can listen in.
Perfect. Won't get dis. Good job.
That's good. Extension like that.
Well, I'm hoping that this works, otherwise you'll see me panic.
Otherwise it'll be a short exercise.
Yeah. Otherwise,
And that's.
We do have some adapters that you don't have, yeah, that kind of plug.
usually it works.
There you go.
You guys don't have a clicker down there by chance, do you? I forgot the clicker at the office. Otherwise, I don't mean to kick Shirley out. I can stay here and just.
I think she was planning.
He was good.
There.
Said something else anyway. We'll adapt and overcome.
Snyder, hello?
Yeah, Fatima.
Snyder, do you mind sharing your screen so people who are joining online can see it?
Would you mind coming down here and helping me do that?
Coming now, just because I'm a bit far, but I'm gonna be there like in 3 minutes, okay?
Perfect. How about in 3 minutes, you help me share my screen?
Yes, I'm on my way.
Do you guys have a clicker, Fatima?
No,
Okay, no worries.
Oh, just to let you guys all know. These papers that I gave,
Make it work.
Ben earlier was immigration. That's good. If you.
That was the H1B, so that means she can stay at least for 3 more years. We still have the permanent resident status, still in the works, but at least
I got them.
she can, we don't have to get the space for
It's
it.
good from, 526.
Thank
This
you.
year to 526, or it goes through 26. It was 3 years.
Which was a good thing to have her to get in place because there were several things like her driver's license and so on that were gonna expire because her status.
Did you catch that, Shirley?
Uh-uh.
Immigration status was approved until, May of 2026.
And we still have the permanent one in the works, but that was in the process yet. So that's why we.
But she's good until like,
Yeah.
very good. Everybody.
I was gonna bring that the other way and not, hey,
Go,
forgot about this.
You're supposed to stay here. Well, yeah, that's a good card.
I will do my very best.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
We'll talk about your leaves. Okay, sounds good. I'll give you a
Yeah, really. We can.
Fatima's on her way down, so she can share my screen for me and.
You know, we were talking about the unexpected, I-95 Philadelphia. Yeah, that's the unexpected. You just never.
That still seems a little fishy to me.
About that Davenport collapse. Yeah, that's a mess.
Especially for all the people that had the concerns about it.
For the people that signed up, so
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. 100
So they have Rochester Towers condominiums, they gave 3 hours to get out, that's a premium condominium. And I went and looked at that over the weekend, and there's, the construction guys put orange markings over everything, plus took windows out, so. It's like, wow, that would be, and there's at least 4 units for sale, you know that their value went to 0.
What was that?
Rochester Tower condominiums up on, Second Street Southwest in Rochester. It was, past a week ago on Friday evening, the residents got a notice, you gotta be out in 3 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
all the way.
Yeah, it looks like a beautiful.
Yeah, it does. Hey, Tony. What was the address of the register?
Yes.
As the alternative.
No, it's the ones that are, you know where Baldwin is, it's just west of that. Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, they.
I will be, virtually next Monday.
Thank you.
Next Monday, I will have to join virtually. I won't be here.
Okay.
I'll be in California, eating good clam chowder.
Oh, well, that's the only thing that I envy about your trip out there, really, Mark. Because I know what you just hinted. I know that spot.
Doug Mazzini's Dockside.
Oh, man.
There's some more on the chair.
Yeah,
You don't think you could freeze a container, bring it home, maybe?
I could be convinced.
Or maybe even get the recipe, that would even be better.
Oh, yes. Everybody has a backside.
Stuff happening. See that piece? You saw how they have people fight for you. Yeah, they can share. John, I mean, I'll talk about it over by the wet hole. I was up there. I lift the wall connection. It's a water tower to the desktop. Yeah, I felt it when I saw it. This morning. I'm more concerned, right, I have to call and understand that, but that other thing, that's fine. I mean, there you go. Yeah, I'll go take a look at that. Yeah. Probably this see John and just, because then they told me about it. And that was Spot there. I went and saw John this morning, I think, initially, that's. So that's, we looked at that as well, that he's looking for water, image of this stuff. Now, once you drink water, he's seen itself. But this was a wet ceiling.
Say what? We'll see how what. Well, I just appreciate the fast. Oh, it was in.
Well, I think, you guys ready? I think we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe Dan has to officially say that.
Oh, you go ahead.
All right, so can everybody hear me okay? Thank you for coming today. I promise this will be the best 6 or 7 hours of your day. We'll get this done as quick as possible, okay? Yeah. That was my bad attempt at some humor right away today. But my name's Sean Snyder. I'm Winneshiek County Emergency Management. Thank you all for coming. Today, I asked the supervisors for a little bit of time on their agenda. We're going to kind of discuss kind of an emergency operations scenario, emergency operations center scenario. So the intent of today is very much a 10,000 foot view looking down. It's just, we're going to talk we're just going to scratch the surface of the scenario. We're not going to get into the weeds. And when I get to that point, I'm going to kind of explain a little more context. I'm going to say it right now, don't fight the scenario. You're going to see that coming up again. I'm looking at the emergency responders in the crowd. Don't fight the scenario. And I'll say that about 7 more times before we get started. Because I guarantee you one of them will fight the scenario. Okay, so remember that. Real quick, I know we got a big crowd here. I'm Sean Snyder. Just go around the room real quick and introduce yourself. What's your name?
Marta Kelsey.
Thank you.
John Lukey, IT Director.
Excellent.
Reggie Gibson, GIS Analyst.
Perfect.
Mark Follett, Supervisor.
Shirley Vermees, Supervisor.
Janelle Pal, citizen. Kristen Annenring, Public Health Administrator.
Guy hiding in the corner.
Chris Webb, Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office.
Elaine Borowski, Mayor. Mayor Holthouse, just observing.
Jump back. Kelsey,
Kelsey Lindsay and Wyndham.
this gentleman.
Lyle Adi, and citizen.
Excellent. Right behind him.
Elaine St. Clair, citizen.
Mayor.
Keith Rana, Mayor.
Yeah, Mark, Sheriff.
Alan Cassidy, Sheriff's Office.
Kenny Ivan, Sheriff's Office. Garden Oak, I'll fight this.
We always have the one.
Tony Clark, Deputy Auditor.
Mark Vick, Supervisor. Steve Gilsey, Supervisor.
Dan Langkirk, Supervisor.
Best for last.
Kate Plummish, Media.
All right, perfect. Thank you for doing that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the governance of emergency management. We're going to talk about EOC structure and kind of what my expectations when I open an EOC. And then we'll get into the scenario. I promise you, I'm going to be watching the clock. All conversation questions are welcome, but I'm going to try to keep us on a time frame because I know the supervisor's been here already for a few hours, and I'm sure they're wanting to be done for the day. So we'll get through this as quick as possible. Okay. Hopefully have a little bit of fun while we're doing this as well. So emergency management, I'm governed by a commission. It's established in code in two different places, 29C and 605. That's kind of where we dwell within code. It's kind of hard to see on that with
Can you minimize that? Any bar?
Yeah, could you minimize that while you're up?
Yes.
What are you doing? Can you minimize the owl
So,
so we can see the screen in here? Hey, yeah, it's not even following along. I think you gotta do it on this one.
That's not it. I'll work out. Okay.
All right, so that basically says what's hiding is, one member of the Board of Supervisors, the county sheriff, and all the mayors make up my commission. It's got a hair trigger on this thing. So some of the commission partners around the community, we got law enforcement, fire, EMS, public health, WinMed, the Northeast Iowa Regional Emergency Response Committee, NERD, or the Northeast Iowa Response Group, community schools, RSVP, and the list goes on and on. There's many, many more that I didn't put in there. Some of our state and federal partners are Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and then of course FEMA as the federal partner. Our mission statement is to assist the citizens of Winneshiek County with emergency and disaster mitigation, planning, response, and recovery. This effort is accomplished through planning, training, and exercising in partnership with public safety responders, elected officials, and the public. This is pulled right from code in 29C and 605. I think a lot of people think that, Sean, you do planning. Well, there's a lot more under Winneshiek County Emergency Management umbrella besides just planning. So you can see all the different facets that are mentioned in code. A lot of people think, Sean, you're the EMA, you can get stuff. When I teach different classes around the county, how many people show up and have seen the Shawshank Redemption, that movie? Remember the character Red, the guy that can get stuff? That's me for the county, right? I can get stuff. But it's more than just that. When I say stuff, people think of items, right? Resources. Well, resources can be people or teams, equipment, systems, facilities, information. So it's a big myriad of different things besides just stuff. When we get into the EOC, the Winneshiek County, as every county in the state of Iowa, I'm told by the state that I have to manage 15 different emergency support functions. ESFs is what I refer to them. Each year I have to update 20% of those plus ESF 10. That's every year, the hazardous materials for the county. Within the EOC, I will take whoever is going to be helping me in the EOC, and they're going to be put into incident command groupings. Also within that, they're going to be put into like an ESF grouping. For whatever the disaster may be, these are scalable, go up or down. So you'll see in a picture coming up, like a Polk County EOC center that's open. Their emergency operations center is about the size of a high school gymnasium. If you think about it, that's about the size you need if the disaster is that big and I have to activate all 15 ESFs. Because each of the ESF could be 1, could be 10 people representing whatever that ESF level of activation is. So if we have on average 3 people per 15 ESFs, this room would fill up pretty quick. It'd be hard to have individual conversations and not talk over people. The biggest thing with an ESF, think of those as a template for the county. All 15 combined make up Winneshiek County's basic response plan. And ESF is intended to be looked upon as weeks and months. That's the duration of an ESF. There's a new push through FEMA. Can we at least slide that off to the right-hand corner, John?
I can't.
I think you've minimized it on Sean's computer end. Like are you hooked into the meeting, Sean, on your computer?
Fatima worked her magic on.
Because if you're hooked in on your computer, you can minimize it on your end. If you're the one sharing your screen.
Are you actually sharing your screen?
I believe that's what Fatima had set up.
Okay.
Anyway, FEMA is dictating there are 6 recovery support functions. Think of recovery support functions as ESFs are weeks to months. Recovery support functions are months to years. So there is a new shift, kind of a two-sided coin. So when a disaster hits locally, we activate the ESFs, and then I also need to be looking at the RSFs. This year was the first year of incorporating an RSF. The state dictated that it was going to be RSF2 economic is what we started with. I apologize for that, screen's kind of right in the way of everything. What you can't see, fix it for me, Chris, will you? On the left there, that is your basic incident command structure algorithm. For every incident, I'm never going to hear the end of it.
Just want to let you know, it's first responders who take care of this.
Thank you for that. So that algorithm, that is your basic incident command structure for every incident, okay? Now, whether the emergency responders, whether sheriff's office, fire departments, EMS, whatever, whether they realize they're doing it or not, they're doing this to some facet, right? You have the incident commander in the scene, and then to a certain level, you have operations, planning, logistics, and finance underneath all that. This is the basic incident command formula. So think of operations section as the doers, okay? They're the people that are going to figure out what incident command is requesting. They're going to figure out how to make that happen. Then you have the planning section. Once they get the operations ideas down, you have the thinkers, and they're going to figure out how we can make this happen. Logistics come in, they're the people that can get things, right? So now they're working in tandem to figure out, okay, in order to accomplish the operations mission on behalf of incident command, we have to think of the resources needed to accomplish that mission. And then finance. Finance is very important, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Think of them as the checkbooks. There's that picture of Polk County's Emergency Operations Center. Can you see the different colored smocks that the individuals are wearing? Those represent a level of incident command. So the red is operations, for example. Green is logistics. Within that group of smocks would be an ESF function. Webker figured it out. Yeah, we'll never do the next one.
Yeah.
I throw this up there because I was going to pick on WinMed, and since Kelsey's here, I won't pick on her too hard. But for example, I told you that the left-hand side, we got it, Fatima. We got it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So the left-hand side, I told you, is the very base model for an incident command algorithm out in the field. For example, you can see how quickly they can get very convoluted and very complicated. If memory serves, the hospital has 77 different functions within their hospital incident command. So just imagine how complex that is becoming, okay? If you look at the verbiage at the bottom, the command staff consists of PIO, Public Information Officer, Safety Officer, and Liaison Officer. Then you have your general staff. That's the official verbiage for incident command. So everything I've just told you, I'm going to ask you guys your first question. This is the test already. So is the emergency manager ever incident command? I'll give you a hint. It's not yes. Any guesses?
Maybe.
Any guesses? No is the correct answer, right? So somewhere I'll kind of fall in line somewhere in that general staff. Now, does that mean that I don't do a lot of the other functions? Sure, I said it's scalable, but in actuality, I will never be your incident commander. Okay, I am following directives from whoever that incident command may be. I like this slide, and the emergency responders in the room, I think that hopefully it'll help tie incident command back. I'm going to take a second here. We read that, okay? So For this scenario, and this is not the actual scenario, I created this one real quick. So think of this as a train derailment, okay? We're gonna pretend the Canadian Pacific Railroad in the southern part of Winneshiek County is an Amtrak. And they're carrying about 200 people, okay? All of a sudden, somewhere in Winneshiek County, that derails, and we have an incident. This is what's happening, whether the sheriff's office, fire departments, EMS, whoever, this is what happens whether they realize it or not. This is the confusing part for me when I work with like the hospital. The hospital has what's called Hospital Incident Command, or HICS. It's very similar, but yet it's different from what an emergency responder is used to doing, right? So for that incident, our Amtrak just derailed, right? You have incident command. The blue represents EMS. They're in the field. They're handling their situation. The hospital opens up an area command post within the four walls of the hospital. They're going to call it their EOC. I'm going to call it an area command post. If you look at the definition for what an area command post is, and I don't mean to pick on Kelsey, is that very similar to what your EOC is? Yep. Sheriff's office, first deputy's on scene. We're going to pick on Fallon. She's the first one on scene. The sheriff gets down there a few minutes later. The sheriff takes over incident command. He's technically now area command. That can still be on scene. That doesn't have to be 17 miles away. That can be on scene. But because Dan is there, he is now area command for that situation. Fire department's doing their own thing, right? Canadian Pacific, which is our Amtrak, they'd be part of incident command. Add all four of those up, that's how you get unified command. So these four, at some point, are working together on the scene. They're reporting back to their area commands, giving them sit reps, situation reports, saying, I need this resource, whatever. If the situation is big enough, and they request me, I'll open a countywide emergency operations center. The flow, it's very important to follow incident command principles. The flow goes up and it comes down. It doesn't hopscotch everybody, right? That's how we get confusion. So it goes up, it goes down. So law enforcement, they're on scene for this scenario. Incident command is saying we've got a bunch of uninjured patients that need transportation, or you can put that in EMS, whatever one. They're going to talk to their area command and say, we need 17 buses. We're going to get these people out of here in one shot. They reach back to me and say, Sean, I need 17 buses. This is what incident command is requesting. Whoever's helping me in the EOC, we're going to put that resource down on the whiteboard and say, this is our first request. Let's work the scene. Okay. I have transportation MOUs in place. I can get 3 buses and 3 drivers. We report back to Dan as the incident command requesting it and say, you may want 17, I can get you 3. Instead of 1 trip to remove everybody, you're going to have to do it in 5. That's how we work together as a team. Does that make sense? I kind of used Dan as an example, but I had WinMed as a very similar situation in there. Okay, does that slide make sense? Because that's really the meat and potatoes. Go ahead.
I want to throw a wrench into your.
Of course, don't fight the scenario, but go ahead.
Okay, I mean, no, you're the one that brought up the train derailment example. So I'm going to give you the example of where the train derailment happens below Lake Myers. But you get access to it. The only people that know the area good enough is Fort Fire, Calmer Fire, and a few deputies. So if you're gonna get 200 people out of there, because there's no roads down to it,
yep,
you're gonna have to have the fire departments figure out how to get there to begin with. So they're gonna be your #1 contact. Then it's gonna be the sheriff's department relaying everything to you guys. And as the one place in the southern part of Winneshiek County, there is no access.
Yep. Yeah. Technically it's still a unified command. When you get 4 different white hats on scene, it's technically unified command. Whether they're calling it out and doing that or not, it's technically unified command. So at some point, the fire department's gonna come up and relay whatever to law enforcement saying, this is what we're doing. They just gave each other a situation report. I totally respect what you're saying. I didn't want to get that deep into the weeds, so this is a high level overview.
What you're saying, Sean, is everything on the left side of your screen there, there's no order of importance.
Correct.
This is higher, who is lower, it's all the same.
All the same.
And they're all reporting back if we have a situation big enough to the emergency manager, they're countywide. So it's not like,
It's not a pecking
any
order.
more authority than the fire or EMS or anybody like that. It's all-
Because you may have some of the, incident command posts trying to order the same thing, and once it's going to you, you.
Boy,
can
it's
say,
like you
"We
read
already-"
It's like you read my screen coming up here, but yes, exactly. Yes. That's exactly perfect point. And yes, this is not in a pecking order. This is all, everyone is doing their own thing. Could this have been a malicious event to where law enforcement needs to investigate? We don't know. So Dan and his team is still doing their thing on the law enforcement side, while fire is trying to stabilize the scene. EMS is trying to get helicopters and get more ambulances and whatever they need. Maybe the medical examiner needs to be en route. We have deaths, all that kind of thing. Meanwhile, Amtrak or Canadian Pacific, they're doing their own thing as well. At some point, you four come together whether you realize it or not. That may be when I get on scene and say, hey, all four need to talk so we can eliminate duplication of efforts.
It'd be no different if this was, you changed the situation as school shooting and you dropped
Exactly.
Canadian Pacific and you added school.
School.
Their
Yeah.
thing. Nobody's gonna have anything.
Exactly.
Wise, it's all gonna be a joint effort.
Yeah.
As opposed to that. Or-
Yeah, in fact, I was gonna use that as an example, but I didn't want to get that down on a Monday morning. So I figured, 200 people in an imaginary train derailment was easier, so.
Sorry that.
That's all right. Good questions. Great questions, actually. So once we're inside an EOC, we're gonna obtain situational awareness. We're gonna manage our EOC functions by objectives or requests, whatever adjective you want to use. The EOC is transitioning from reaction to managed phase. We're gonna establish an EOC rhythm, and the next slide talks about that a little more. We're gonna assemble staffing patterns to carry out actions. We're gonna process results in a common operating picture. Utilize single point ordering that helps reduce duplication of efforts. Think and act strategically when enabling and supporting operational actions in the field, and focus on operational coordination and synchronizing activities. A very, very low key example that happened within the last 2 years, I'll pick on Castelia Fire. Anybody from Castelia Fire in here? All right, so we can talk bad about them. They had a situation and there was 3 people calling into dispatch requesting a resource. There was 2 people on scene calling the same person with their cell phones, asking for that same resource. So that person that was that resource that they were requesting was getting very frustrated, right? And then those 5 individuals had no idea that the one person, that any of the other 4 were actually requesting that resource. That's why it's very important, goes up and back down through the proper channels. So I promised you the next slide, we're going to talk about the EOC rhythm. So this planning P, this is what emergency management kind of lives by, right? So the incident happens, we kind of go up through our initial meeting, our briefing, and once we get on the hamster wheel, we just continue until the event is over, right? That kind of gives you an idea. Within this, it's operational periods, we're management by objectives. We're going from reactive to proactive, big problems to a series of smaller problems, meetings, briefings, breakouts, media briefings. JIP, that's a fancy acronym for Joint Information Center. So if we had a situation with media in the room, for example, if this was our EOC, I would probably commandeer a room wherever I could, and that not in this building, for example, and that's where media would be. We would set up, hourly briefings or every 4-hour briefings through the public information officer, whatever the level of scenario that is, would dictate how often. And then that's where Kate would know that every whatever time she is to go to this location, not the EOC, because a lot of maybe private or sensitive information is happening in here. And we will give the media a briefing, at certain times. Does that make sense, Kate, since you're the media person in the room? And that helps them get their information, so that way they're not trying to find information from anybody that would maybe not know what's going on, but willing to talk to a reporter. One thing about an EOC, it doesn't have to be disaster-based. An EOC is a perfect opportunity to engage community partners for large-scale events. We can plan. We can actually have a course of action for the planning event. I could think of Nordic Fest, the Winneshiek County Fair, Ocean Fest, you know, all these different large-scale events, large-scale to us, that happen. How much planning actually goes into it? You know, does everybody understand what their roles and responsibilities are if there's severe weather, that kind of thing? So just kind of beat this home a little bit. So inside the EOC, remember, all disasters begin and end locally. I am there to help facilitate a process of making better decisions together. And a countywide approach is usually a better way to handle this than an individual approach. It's a good way to, again, to quote Dan, reduction and duplication of efforts. Inside the EOC, you're going to hear me talk about POSTAR. Priorities, objectives, strategies, tasks, assignments, resources. So a lot of times, and I'll give you a hint, there's 3 levels of an EOC opening for Winneshiek County. A lot of times the very basic is monitoring. So that could be any situation, small scale event. A lot of times I do all of this on behalf of the incident commander. I'm handling it from the scene in the back of my Durango. I just take care of it. As we get bigger scenes or bigger incidents, then we start to branch out and I need to pull more people in. The biggest takeaway is SMART acronym for objectives. That's very important. If it's going to be an objective, it needs to be a SMART objective. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Last 4 slides before we get into the scenario. So I'm a visual learner, so I created this. After any event, there are 4 priorities in emergency management. Basically, since we stole this from the fire side. Any fire service individual knows priority 1, 2, and 3. Since we're emergency management, we borrowed it and tweaked it to make it our own, so we added a 4th. Life safety, incident stabilization, property, environmental protection, community recovery. As I said earlier, that one slide, there's no peck order to this. This is definitely a pecking order. It goes just like that, 1 through 4. Okay. So think of help me with my visualization. Think of a tree, right? So if we're using life safety as our priority, we could create 3. We could create more objectives, but I created 3 objectives from incident command that would be under life safety. And I even put which part of incident command in parentheses. You'll see in the next 2 slides what I'm referring to. And I believe it's objective B is what we're going to utilize for the next 2 moving forward. So you can see the life safety is the trunk of the tree. The objectives are the branches. So the objective is evacuate hazard area within 2 hours of notification. So some strategies developed off of that one objective. You can see there. Notify residents and businesses via automated notification system within 30 minutes post-event. Provide transportation buses at intersection of 3rd and Main within 45 minutes post-event. Establish secure perimeter at all intersections around evacuation zone within 2 hours post-event. Does everything seem like a SMART objective there? It's got time associated with it. Okay. And then finally, the tasks that go with that. You can see the tasks. Procure 200 barricades or cones. That's logistics. That's going to work on that for me. Execute agreement for transportation buses. Finance, draft evacuation procedure planning, and post information on social media, PIO. Does that make sense how it works itself through the process? All right, we're getting into the scenario. Byron, would you like to read that first bullet point out loud for me real quick?
Don't fight the scenario. Please read again. Don't fight the scenario.
All right, so currently not all questions may have any answers. That's okay. There's always more work to be done. Assumptions will be made in order to progress through this scenario. I'm gonna make a lot of assumptions. We're gonna barely scratch the surface on a scenario. That's where we're gonna stop, okay? Answers like everything would work itself out. Sheriff Marks, would you please read that one out loud one more time?
Answers like everything will work itself out are not allowed.
Perfect. Please ask questions. There's no wrong questions. I may not know an answer off the top of my head, but I will get back to you if I don't know the answer. Polite and courteous environment. Web crew, would you like to read that one out loud real quick?
Minimize the screen.
Yeah. All right, so again, this intent of this tabletop exercise gets you thinking about the overall 10,000 foot view of Winneshiek County after a large scale event. Again, we're only gonna be talking about one little step in this, one little scratch. All right. I think I'm gonna have t-shirts made because I coined this, and I think I need to actually get it officially coined so I can make $1 every time someone says it. But in 8 years of doing this job, I firmly believe in that.
You read it again.
The most difficult part of any plan are the assumptions being made within and the expectations that go along with them. The disaster within the disaster will be our most challenging adversary. There's our scenario, tornado. I pulled that off the internet. I didn't take that picture, so. All right. I could read this out loud. Maybe I should so everybody can see it. But when I get done with this, I'm going to ask if it's a plausible situation, okay? Hot and humid Saturday evening in June. National Weather Service out of La Crosse has issued multiple severe weather watches throughout the week with no real weather-related incidents taking place in Winneshiek County thus far. 5 p.m., the Weather Service out of La Crosse issued a tornado watch for the southern half of Winneshiek County. 6:15, the Weather Service out of La Crosse issued a tornado warning for the southern half of Winneshiek County, and spotters are requested by me. At 6:22, rotation is noted by Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office deputies between Jackson Junction and Fort Atkinson, heading northeast, and the outdoor weather siren is activated for Fort Atkinson. 6:29, a tornado was spotted on the ground entering the city limits of Fort. The tornado touched down near Rogers Creek and the railroad tracks on County Road W14, heading northeast towards Kelmer. Early reports state the tornado was on ground for just over 6 miles before dissipating between Middle Kelmer Road and Highway 52 outside of Kelmer. Early reports of debris in and around the tornado path, including downed power lines. Power is out for most of Fort Atkinson, Kelmer, and surrounding homes. And since I wanted to make this as easy as possible, we don't have to worry about anyone, no one got hurt. There's no reports of any human-related injuries, okay? So we're not getting into the EMS side of this. Keith, I'm looking at you. Okay?
Because I was looking at you.
Yep. So, let me ask the responders in the room, is this plausible? Is this something that could happen?
Yes.
Okay. Here is the initial kind of projected path. You can see where the tornado touched down in Fort Atkinson. Thank you to Reggie with GIS for the beautiful map. Here is the final path. You can see the dotted line, that's the path. There are the noted things that Incident Command has reported that they know damage has been to. On the second page of your paper, this is what those blips on the map were referring to. So initial noted areas of impact. In Fourth, we got the library community center buildings been damaged, the trailer park and multiple single family homes. Kelmer, we got the fire station, city hall, library, police station, NICC, trailer park, Quick Star, several local businesses, multiple single family homes. In the county, we got Lake Meyer Campground, multiple farms, including crops, multiple single family homes. How are we feeling about the event so far? Sucks.
Can't believe anybody get hurt.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna make this extra credit. Which areas count towards a presidential disaster declaration? Say it a little louder.
All of them.
All of them. Crops. A lot of people ask me about crops. I do not report crop damage. That is the Farm Service Association, Winneshiek County here. The crops, the farmers report that direct to them. That's a federal level thing. That's not Sean, okay? Single family homes. What does Sean do for single family homes?
Put them in contact with FEMA.
Put them in contact with their insurance agency. I'll document, I'll take photos, obviously make sure they're okay, that kind of thing. But, and I'll get to that in a second. Mainly, I want to make sure that they have contacted their insurance company and get that ball rolling. Okay? How about the public infrastructure stuff? Is that where Sean is very interested in initially post-event? Yes. So things like the library community center, fire station, library, police station, NICC, Lake Meyer campground. Those are the areas that I'm going to focus on. So in FEMA, there's two sides, the public assistance, which has to do strictly with dollars. Okay, I hate the word public assistance because the homeowners think that's me. They're going to get something from it. That's not, that's public assistance. So that is the county. That is conservation, emergency management, the cities. Those agencies could get money back after damages. Single family homes, all I could count post-event would be like their insurance deductible or any money that is not covered under their insurance. So for simple math, let's say they have a $100,000 home and a $100,000 policy. And this probably won't make sense, but I'm just trying to make a point. They have $105,000 worth of damage. I can count that $5,000 on that individual home towards the PA side of dollar amount total for the county.
What's the threshold?
So Winneshiek County is just under $80,000. Now, a lot of people think 80,000, that doesn't sound like a lot. Well, if everyone is covered with insurance, I'm looking at, you know, minimal deductibles. So it takes a lot of homes to get damaged with just going off deductibles. Usually the biggest player after disaster would be like secondary roads, right? I mean, you got how many roads in Winneshiek County, how many miles? It's tremendous, you know. Yeah, so if they're damaged, you know, that helps, that helps exceed our 80,000 pretty quick. Okay. The other half of FEMA is the individual assistance. That's the side that could potentially help the homeowner. Last time I checked, that goes off of total number of homes destroyed. That has nothing to do with dollar amounts. So I think for a large scale disaster, it has to be like 300 and some homes, if memory serves, destroyed. So if this is our basement of our house, let's say, we can have water touching the light fixture in our basement. That is minor damage according to FEMA. The only time it gets major is when you have foundational damage, or if this is our basement, now we have another 2 foot of water on the main floor and we're above the outlets. That becomes major at that point, assuming there's no structural damage. Well, those of us that live in Iowa, do we have a few expensive items sitting in our basement? Furnace, water heater, water softener, all that stuff, right? It's minor damage according to FEMA. All right, so here's some open questions. I won't pick on anybody, we'll just kind of rattle them off. So for that event, should an EOC be opened?
Yeah.
Okay. Who can technically open an EOC for Winneshiek County? I'll give you a hint. There are 2 more. Any other guesses? They're both in this room. Sheriff and any guesses? Paul Harold, any guesses? Mayor Paul Harold. Yep. How long should it take to open an EOC? What's an acceptable amount of time for a situation like this? 3 seconds. Yeah. That's about when the phone starts ringing. There is no good answer to some of this stuff, right? It's going to depend on the level of disaster. It's going to depend on how busy I am helping the initial response phase. If you go off of the courses I've taken, 8 hours to the next day is kind of when the EOC should kind of start to take place. Very dependent on the situation. So we all agreed there, I mentioned earlier, there's 3 levels of an EOC that we can open. Monitor, which is, I told you, it's basically me out of the back of my Durango. Partial would be me, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the ESF partners, I'd bring them in. And a full is just that, right? You're inviting a bunch of people. So if it's gonna be a full EOC, with that situation, who should be asked to participate in the EOC? Any guesses?
Safety.
Public safety. Probably want some elected officials from Calmer, or yeah, Calmer, Ford, supervisor, to make sure they're,
Fire department.
fire department.
Sheriff's department.
I would beg like IT and GIS to have them there. Public health's always a great partner to have there.
What about, like our local construction companies, like, bringing Riley, their equipment? Filtered into the.
Yeah, so that'd probably be more of working with the incident commander on scene, kind of thing, more so than, bring them into like an EOC type environment. Should security credentialing measures be in place when opening an EOC? I'll give you a hint, it's not no. Any guesses? Yes, yep. All right, to what level? That's totally up to, whatever, sheriff's office is gonna be busy, so, to whatever level that looks, I don't know. It's just gonna depend on the level of situation as well.
Sean, in regards to the EOCs, how close to the disaster area, Fort and Calmer, would you want the EOC set up? Or should a guy just look at auction to house all them?
That's actually coming up in the next slide, so if you don't mind waiting, I'll get to that then. But great question though. How does the EOC communicate with the incident command area command posts?
Cell towers could be down, so radios.
I think the answer I was looking for that could be either the liaison position, if we have a true EOC up and running, or I would have accepted any means possible. In 2008, when I responded to Parkersburg tornado, to go along with what you had just said, the incident obviously happened in Parkersburg. The EOC was in Allison. It was a long ways going around damaged roads with vegetative debris and that kind of thing. And that was kind of at the onset of cell phones. Cell towers were down, so it was literally a runner. So incident command had a list of things they needed. We would give it to a runner, and then they would, however long it took them to drive to Allison, because you had to go way around. That was basically how we were communicating.
Sean, before you move on from this slide to more of a comment, that maybe you could expand on a little bit. In the few EOCs, full-scale EOCs that we've had here in Winneshiek County, going back to, I think your 3rd bullet point there, who should be asked to participate in the EOC? That's always a fine line, because if you ask anybody if they think they should be in the EOC, they're gonna say yes.
That's coming up in a slide.
Okay, you're covering that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But great question though.
Yeah.
So yeah, any means possible, is basically what I would have accepted for that. And then here, you guys have already kind of touched on this. When considering the magnitude of this potential event, coupled with the consideration of smaller volunteer departments, our fire departments, EMS, whatever that may be, inundated organizations, hospitals gonna be busy, right? Or overwhelmed small communities, Fort and Calmer, with limited staff, how do we make someone participate in an EOC? This is another one. I can't make anybody participate in an EOC. I'm not trying to trick you. It's just a lot of, 2016 flood, and I'll get to that in a second. That was the last time we had a brick and mortar traditional EOC open. Sean filled a lot of the positions, just because with that scenario, how many live down that way? Could you potentially be affected yourself? Or a loved one could be affected, so you're gonna be taking care of your own stuff. How do I get Mark pulled off of that when he's dealing with his own farm and situation to sit in here and try to answer questions? It's very difficult. Something to work towards. So, first assumption, we're gonna assume it's been about 30 minutes. Fire law EMS resources, including mutual aid, are already on scene. They've been there about 30 minutes. And I've already been in contact verbally with Dan Langrick and have got him to okay a countywide disaster declaration. These right here are the initial incident command requests coming in from whoever is incident command, whether that's sheriff's office, fire department, they're all equal, it doesn't matter. These are the first things that I'm hearing that they're calling me for and saying, we've got this going on. So when I open an EOC, these are the things, the next few slides we're going to talk about, okay? They're requesting specialized search and rescue teams, SAW teams due to many roads being impassable from vegetative debris, resource management, rapid needs assessment, damage assessment, volunteer management, shelter management, and transportation for uninjured displaced citizens. So that's what my phone is blowing up with. These are the requests. Here are some of the thoughts that Sean is thinking right as soon as I'm writing all these down. Volunteer workforce concerns. And we're going to get into that a little bit, but the majority of these are volunteer workforce dependent. I can't stress that enough. That is not Sean doing this. You know, Sean can't be in all of those places. How do we divvy up resources? Who gets what, when, and how? You got elected officials in the EOC, and they're all saying their citizens are upset and we need X, Y, Z. Who gets priority? Communication breakdowns to the public. That never happens, right? The public is always our biggest ally with anything. So how do we keep them engaged to where that train doesn't derail? Cost for resources. Incident command is saying, hey, I saw this on TV one time and they can bring in the National Guard. Why can't you do that? I've had those phone calls. Okay. Think of every resource request as a cost. Everything that the EOC or incident command is requesting, you have to pretend it has an invoice with it, because it might. And pets, that's going to be the reoccurring theme moving forward. How many of you have pets in the room? How many of you would feel comfortable just leaving your pet after this situation? My wife and I have a pug, and she will tell you that she loves that pug more than me.
That's understandable.
Yes. So she will not leave the pug in a damaged house, right? This, I can tell you, statewide is an emergency that we need to get figured out. It's not just Winneshiek County, and I'll talk about more of that coming up. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about moving forward. And that's all we're going to talk about, the initial requests. Again, I didn't hurt anybody in this scenario. Otherwise, there'd be EMS related things, hospital related things. I mean, the laundry list could just get huge. That's why I want to keep it just a small scratch. So inside the EOC, I'm going to start breaking down these resource requests with whoever's helping me. So objective, strategy, and tasks. I'll give you a hint. What's an objective? These are all the objectives. So your objectives are, I will give those to you because I'm hearing that from incident command. That's our objectives. Now we're going to break down an objective into a strategy and a task. So let's go simple because I've talked about it already. Let's talk about transportation for uninjured displaced citizens. What would be a strategy for getting transportation for uninjured displaced citizens to the scene for Dan? Contacting Earl, okay? School buses. Yep. We could go even a little higher level overview, would say, let's say buses, let's say. And then the task would be more contact Earl, enact an MOU. Does that make sense, Shirley? Kind of just break it down.
Yep.
Okay, so we kind of walk that through, but you see how that goes? So for every resource request, I'm trying to digest it. That old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I got to put a little area of help there. Think of an objective as an overarching need. Strategy is an effort to break down the objective to smaller, more obtainable goals. And a task is a resource required to accomplish each strategy while working towards the objective. So once we open things and once I have the verbal go ahead on the disaster declaration, a lot of things unlock on behalf of Winneshiek County through me. So like a search and rescue team and SAW team, that's a simple request that I can put in through Iowa Homeland Security. Now, I need you guys to understand that last sentence. They take time to get here, right? The mothership in Polk County, last time I checked, is what, about a 3-hour drive? And I guarantee you, they don't have these volunteer workforce, because it's still volunteer, waiting in a hangar ready to go. So we could be looking at 6 hours the next day before we get specialized. Just imagine if people are trapped. I didn't want to go that deep with the scenario, but that's the time frame. Resource request. If anybody wants to try and play, you can use the QR code. That's how I track resource requests coming in from Incident Command. I use JotForm. That QR code will take you to a form that I created, and I can track the resource requests. Rapid needs versus damage assessment. Rapid needs is basically what Incident Command does when they get on scene. They're looking at those 4 priorities, life safety, all those, and that's what they're doing for rapid needs. And that's where a lot of this comes from. Damage assessment is a little different. So damage assessment, I have a small training team of RSVP volunteers and a few emergency response training, emergency responders trained throughout the county. So once the scene is safe enough to bring those people in, and that's the key, it has to be safe enough to bring those people in, we can start doing an official damage assessment for the county. And that's where I'll start calculating and working with my partners to say, how much damage do we have? How many homes been damaged? Any loss of life? All that goes in towards a potential presidential disaster declaration. Little side note, since 2015 when I came in, Winneshiek County has experienced over 5 million in damages, and we've had 7 presidential disaster declarations. Spontaneous volunteers, they can be tricky to manage, but not impossible. Shelter management, another area where RSVP can assist the local jurisdictions until agencies like the American Red Cross arrive and assume shelter operations. Again, this is very, very volunteer workforce dependent. Even the American Red Cross. How many of you are American Red Cross volunteers? What if I told you in Northeast Iowa, and when I say Northeast Iowa, I think last time I checked, it's about 4 or 5 counties. There's less than 10 American Red Cross volunteers that cover about 5 different counties. So I could call them hypothetically after this event happens and say, Calmer is requesting a full activation of a shelter to be set up. And they're going to tell me, we'll work on getting volunteers. Okay, so it takes time. Shelter management, we just talked about that. Transportation MOUs. How many of you jurisdictions have your own MOUs in place? Does anybody? Is that something that you're just assuming Sean does for you? That's something to consider, right? And then pets. I can't stress that enough. That's an area where a lot of time and resources can be quickly consumed, and we will spin our wheels for hours in the EOC and not have any good path moving forward when it comes to pets. All right, so considering the communities of Fort Atkinson and Calmer have both received serious damage, would the EOC staff recommend the Incident Command, where would we recommend the EOC be located? How about shelter? I think Keith had asked this question. So if Fort, we took out our shelter in Fort with the community center. We took out our shelter in Calmer with the fire department. So they've both been damaged. So where would be an acceptable EOC setup for that situation?
I'm thinking to go to Ocean because you got the school, you got Wildwoods, you got 2 schools, and you got Wildwoods.
Yep.
Because in Calmer, you took out NICC also.
Yep. Yeah, again, there's no wrong answer. We could do it here in Decorah if we had to, you know, there's no wrong answer. The EOC does not have to be in the affected area. Does it make things simpler, especially if we're having communications issues with responders? Sure. But we would put it wherever we could. Same with the shelter. It's just going to be one of those decisions we got to decide as an EOC with the elected officials' help and figure out where the best place for that. Talk about an acceptable amount of time for an EOC. What about for a shelter? You got a lot of displaced citizens in Winneshiek County. What's gonna be their response when they reach out to the elected officials? And do we have a good time frame? What's their expectations versus reality? And I don't mean that bad. You gotta understand, their expectations are, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but do you guys think that there is a shelter that's ready to go immediately if there's for those citizens in the room?
No.
No,
Good.
You'd have to.
Sean, does each locale in, like each of our villages, each of our calls, do they have the designated first, like Plan A shelter?
So I have MOUs, memorandums of understanding, I'm sorry if I use acronyms, with about 14 or 17, I can't remember, different locations around the county. As a commission, we looked at those and we had those approved. When you begin volunteer or shelter management operations, you should also consider donations management. So this is something as an elected official, take notice of. If you are the city, county willing to accept what are you willing to accept for donations? I would highly, highly, highly recommend monetary only. In 2016, we opened the shelter due to the flood. There was really no good donations management plan put in place. Terry Benzow, when he was the director of the recycling center, he will tell you, we took in the most tube TVs in the state of Iowa as donations. Who can use a tube TV? But the county didn't have a good plan. I'm not picking on the county. And we accepted them, right? Because we were taking, I think a lot of people took it as an opportunity to clean out their garage, their attics. I was joking with him at the time. I said, tell me when you see your first 70s leisure suit come through, those might actually be worth some money. So it's how, if we're gonna take money, where's the money go and how is it managed? I would love to talk more about that with the supervisors offline sometime at a different meeting. Vegetative debris. TJ, he's not here. He was gonna come. I was gonna have him talk briefly about that. And supervisors might know, because I think 4 out of 5 are on the, am I saying that right, Dan? 4 out of 5 are on the solid waste.
Yeah.
For the general public, the landfill will not take vegetative debris. They don't take it. So if we have this disaster and there are many, many trees, how many toured Kelmer last year or 2 years ago? After that windstorm?
July 23rd of last year.
Was it last year? Yes. The time gets away from me, but there were small mountains of vegetative debris, and you can't take it to the landfill. And finally, who has the ultimate responsibility for this scenario? He's pointing at me. I was gonna say, it's not Sean. I'll give you any hint. Elected official, any guesses?
Mayor Browners.
Yep, the elected officials, right? They have the ultimate responsibility for this scenario. So past operations, EOC operations will vary greatly and are dependent on each incident. In 2016, you can see I opened it for 3 days. Going off memory, that was the hours of operation, basically 8 to 6:30, day 1, day 2, and about 8 to 5, day 3. Key EOC players in the above event were the city, many city of Decorah staff, the mayor, county auditor, Ben Steinis, John Logston, and John Lupke, and of course, public health was there, and RSVP volunteers. When I open an EOC, I'm thinking of 3 things right away. What are the immediate needs? What will be the needs 8 hours from now? And what are the potential needs 24 hours from now? I use that each day as a new day starts. That's my guiding principles, basically, for when I open an EOC. A team approach is needed. One jurisdiction does not overrule another. Keith, do you want to write that down so you can refer to it?
I would definitely concur with Paul.
And the sheriff talked about this a second ago. Not every person who wants to be in an EOC will be allowed an EOC. An EOC is not, how do I want to say this? It's not a free-for-all. If I'm going to manage it effectively, I need certain key players, and that is not a knock against anybody that wants to participate. I need key players in there. To go in a little further, outside of the EOC, the EOC support staff, and I'm talking like public health, GIS, IT. I'm considering all of those kind of, they're in it with me whether they want to be or not. Outside of that, the single most important part of an EOC is having the correct persons working the EOC. The person working the EOC must be able to speak for the jurisdiction financially. The EOC will be ineffective if this person working the EOC must converse with someone else prior to making a final financial decision on behalf of that. So I'll pick on Dan Langert, he's right here, right? Let's pretend he's not the county board of supervisor. If he is XYZ person representing the board of supervisor, and I say, we've got this going on, we're gonna talk to Brunings, we're gonna get 6 dump loads of sand. It's gonna cost somewhere in a range of this. And he has to, and we need the decision now because incident command, we have a hazardous materials leak, and incident command needs it to get to stop or dam up the leak. And this person has to go outside, try to get a hold of Dan to get the final financial okay before he or she can come back and tell me yes or no. That's ineffective. That's not how an EOC works. Does that make sense? So as I talked, my last slide here, kind of a little help wanted. This is in no particular order of importance. Winneshiek County currently does not have any form of a long-term recovery coalition. So if we have that situation, do you think the cities of Fort and Kelmer would, is this something you're going to bounce back from immediately? Or do you think it might take a little time to heal the cities, might need a little help with goals and keeping the ball rolling, right? Donations management plan. As I said earlier, what are we willing to accept? Where are we going to put it? If it's money, who manages it? Where are we putting it? Livestock rollover emergency plan. I would say that and the pets are probably something that my counterparts are stressing and trying to work on throughout the state. I know the sheriff's office in Kelmer Fire, it's probably been a year ago now, maybe time gets away from me. How many hours did you spend on seeing that rollover outside of Kelmer? And then it, you know, I don't, as a volunteer fireman, I don't ever remember going through training on how to wrangle cattle off of rollover, right? But that's what we expected the firemen to do, because what else are we gonna do with them? Displaced pets, again, huge. How many house fires do I go to? And I spend more time dealing with pets because there's no place to put them. There's no place to take them. There's no documentation whether they've had their shots. So that rules out a lot of the different organizations. Volunteer workforce retention. That's something statewide, nationwide, right? And I'm not saying we have to solve that. I'm just putting that up there like that's going to be a riddle going forward. Public-private partnerships. That's a huge thing in the emergency management world. How do I bring the private organizations and agencies to the table to get them engaged, to get them to be willing to offer resources? Remember that whole laundry list of what resources may be post-event. But post-event is not the time when I need to be doing a handshake with them for the first time, right? Emergency management is all about building relationships. You need to have that in place before the event. And then finally, the residents who fall through the systems post-disaster. What I mean by that is after I work with Dan and I activate a countywide disaster, individual assistance, statewide individual assistance will be activated. Community Action does that on my behalf. That opens up an up to $5,000 grant, so to speak, to help those individuals. It is very, very income based. I think I'm trying to go off memory, so don't quote me, but like a family of 4, you can't make more than like $45,000 a year to even be eligible. Well, there's a lot of people, especially post-COVID, that are, you know, they're financially strapped right now. Is there a way that we can create a team to maybe solicit donations, and then maybe through like a vetting process, that team says, hey, I will give you $500 to pay your insurance deductible because you met these criteria they have in place, that kind of thing. Again, is that our responsibility? I'm not saying it is, But when I visit with homeowners after a disaster, and you can see it in their face that they don't have two nickels to rub together, but yet they have a hole in their roof, it kind of pulls on the heartstrings a little. So what do we do to help those individuals who fall through the cracks? All right, I threw a lot at you. I apologize. I was going fast. I wanted to keep it to a little over an hour and allow time for questions. You can see how we just barely scratched the surface of a incident that frankly, maybe not quite to this level, but honestly, I could say the Kelmer windstorm we had last year, what day was it? July 23rd? That was pretty much the laundry list that I was getting from Kelmer Fire when they were doing their initial assessment. And I fielded that myself. So now take that times 2 or 3 communities, or Parkersburg tornado, that size tornado that wipes out half of Decorah. You know, that kind of thing. So any questions? Did I baffle all you, put you to sleep?
Do you think that Winneshiek County, and maybe surrounding areas, but definitely our county, I remember when Krista and Steve did our training the other day, that Steve mentioned that we're dangerously short of EMS volunteers. Would a media campaign help to drum up volunteers in this community of the needs that we have, so we are prepared in a better way for disasters?
I think it's a great idea, Shirley. I'm also a paramedic, and as the sheriff's office knows, EMS is near and dear to me. It's twofold, the EMS, and I don't want to bore you, but it's twofold, right? We can throw money at EMS agencies because they need money for training and that kind of thing. But truthfully, it's the volunteers. Who wants to sign up for a 2-year program and become a paramedic and then make $20 an hour? Or zero as a volunteer. The
It costs you money to do it.
It costs you a lot of money.
Amount of time and money.
About $10,000 for me to become a paramedic. And that was going through NICC. So.
And how many hours did you have?
It was 2 years.
So that's not a solution. My question is more solution based. What do we then do as a community together to find a solution to the shortage of volunteers that are needed if we have a major disaster, and be ready for it?
Yeah, I like your idea of a campaign. Where I was going is you're going to lose them when they're interested. They come in and you explain the steps involved and the time and commitment associated with it. That's where we lose a lot of the volunteers. Steve does a great job. He's in the schools. He's talking to like junior high on up, saying, hey, if this would be a great field to come in. And so I do think that's happening. We're trying our best. It's just when you get into the dollar amount, because which agency is going to cover the 10, and I'm talking as a paramedic level, who's going to cover the $10,000? And then it's, 2,000 hours of clinical time at your own expense, fuel, and to go sit through, and it's just a whole laundry list of things. I like I'm not trying to poo-poo it. It's just, it's a bigger nut to crack.
John, maybe you want to talk about the CERT teams and how all that plays in play?
Sure. So I did a very similar approach I tried to activate a CERT team, a Citizens Emergency Response Team. That's under emergency management's umbrella. I tried to activate that a couple years ago now. Did a whole campaign. I had about 6 or 8 people show up here at the annex for the initial kickoff, kind of learn more session. Most of them, I think, were frequent flyers of our sheriffs or PD associations, agencies. So it's probably not the right individual for that job. So it's very difficult to find the right person for that type of volunteer agency. Does that make sense? Trying to be very politically correct when I say that.
Well, it all makes sense, but at some point as citizens, we do have a voice. We can contact our state legislators and say, there's a need out there in every county in Iowa. Maybe some funds need to be addressed to cover that tuition.
I would welcome that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not just the tuition though, Scott, it's the fact that how many are willing to take the 3 AM call for their neighbor.
Right.
I think that's the biggest issue being, in the position, like most of us are first responders, it's not that we do this because we make lots of money, it's kind of a calling.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, a lot of people don't want to help their neighbor, or maybe they're more interested in their own stuff than worrying about what else goes on. So I see where your struggle is, and being a smaller community, 20-some thousand people in our county, you have to work with what you're given, and we do work well with the fire, EMS, law enforcement, all work together, and we try to build that, and fire departments are great, they have a lot of good people, and they're not, where they get paid $1 a year.
Some of them do, some don't get anything.
Whatever it is, it's that mentality, and you can't, even if you were to offer that, pay for your stuff, people are gonna get and they're gonna leave, and they're gonna go find a job that pays them more, you know, so it's difficult. I understand where you're coming from, but it basically falls on to having these conversations and the people that you have living in your community. As far as,
So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is how as a community do we find that solution? How do we be better prepared?
put feelers out for people who might be interested. Maybe they're retired, maybe they're looking for something to do, and if they want to spend, you know, their time going to school to be that part of volunteer. But as Sean said, you know, you have a family of 4 people who can't rub 2 nickels together, and maybe they want to help, they just financially can't, so it's hard to decide.
Yeah, like, so there's 4 levels in EMS: emergency responder, advanced, emergency responder, EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic. So like an emergency responder is about a 4-month or 1 semester course through NICC. You can take it through, it has to be through a community college. There are no clinicals for that, which is good. I think it costs just under $2,000 to take that course. Again, no clinicals, so it's just your time involved in taking the course and passing the national exam, both psychomotor and cognitive exam. And then you could join up the Winneshiek County first responders, you know, and you could get a e-dispatch page on your phone, and you can respond to an incident where emergency responders are requested in throughout the county. Anything above that level involves clinical time and longer hours, more money than you can just imagine, you know. And that was 12 years ago when I took medic school or whatever, so I'm sure instead of 10,000, it's probably more like 15 or 20 now. So, great questions though. Any other questions? You guys feel like you got a little taste of what an emergency operations center kind of goes through? Yeah, perfect. Appreciate it. But
Are you highly suggesting that the Board of Supervisors, some other entity take up the donations during disasters question?
I would welcome any input, and if you have a team of people that are willing, you need to keep me in the loop so I know what's going on. And then honestly, I can help guide, you know, the donations is a big nut to crack. I want to be up front. There's got to be bylaws in place. You got to get a 501c3 on board to first accept the money. Bylaws in place. You got to have protocols for.
That'd be considered nonprofit.
Yes, 501c3 is a nonprofit. Yep.
So can this be set up ahead of time and also?
Definitely. Yeah, it should be.
Right.
Yeah, it should be all be set up ahead of time.
Do we have it currently?
No, there is nothing in place. So
we need.
I was very, very close with a local partner. I won't throw them under the bus. They have a very good system in place. They already vet projects. And I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to partner with them and kind of grow their umbrella, but their board just felt like it was bigger than what they wanted to go with. So, and I respect that, but it's just, so when you start that, Shirley, how do you keep the volunteers engaged when it's, you know, blue sky weather, right? What I mean by that is we could go, hopefully we go the rest of my tenure with no disasters. We won't ever need them, but how do you keep them engaged? That's the same trouble you're going to run into with, the Long-Term Recovery Coalition, wherever that was at. And frankly, those two could probably be merged together almost. We're a small enough county where you could have a long-term recovery coalition kind of help guide the communities, the organizations post-event. What I mean by that is the response phase happens, and at some point, the response phase stops. Winneshiek County we have some of the greatest emergency response agencies I've ever had the privilege of working with. We have nothing when the response phase is done. So the fire departments, the law enforcement agencies, they grab their toys and they leave. There's nothing after that. Now, depending on the scale of disaster, it might be 3 days, it might be 2 weeks that you've got that response phase going, right, to clean up or to do whatever they need to do. But at some point, the response stops. That's where Long-Term Recovery Coalition comes in, picks up the ball and runs with it.
So in conjunction with that, or maybe totally separate from that actually, do we also as a county make sure we're doing that post-event wrap-up, post-event review?
Yeah, so yeah, with an after-action review is what you're talking about.
That's the word I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so that happens after any disaster or any event. I use the word disaster. I think people think it's huge. The disaster can be anything. Once you overwhelm local resources, you're technically experienced a disaster. So
This might be a dumb question, but could the donations be housed, so to speak, but couldn't the county have that as a piece of one of our things that we do? So it's always in the county and it falls under like the safety committee or security committee, that we always assign somebody within the county to be that contact person or that contact department. And they get volunteers each time, but it's always housed here.
I think that'd be a question for the board and Andy to, I mean, as a taxpayer, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're not saying use tax dollars to fund this. You're saying just have something to where donations could come in and it sit.
It's a point place.
Yeah.
And then, you know, our.
Basically, form another committee, is what you're getting at.
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally up to you guys and Andy to make sure all the i's are dotted and t's are
We should probably
crossed.
just put this up as an agenda item. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I get where you're coming from, Shirley, and it seems like it would make sense, what you're saying.
Yeah.
That the county, if there's another account, so when that money comes in, if the account's already set up through
Ready to go.
501c3 or whatever it is, and it can sit there at that point, we can always reconvene later as now who decides where that money gets distributed. But you're saying, why not on the front side have that account ready?
Just a
It
question.
seems to make a lot of sense to me as I'm sitting there listening to it.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
I'm getting at. That's why I put it on there. Like I literally labeled that slide help wanted. So if you have ideas, suggestions, I need to be involved because that's under the emergency management wheelhouse. But if you have ideas or whatever, I'll gladly entertain it. Because right now, that laundry list of stuff, there is nothing. So that's, like I said in the first slide, you know, there's always work to be done. And a lot of this stuff shines its ugly head weeks after an event, you know, it's like.
And that's one thing Sean does a real good job with. No, when damage is out there or whatever, he's quick, jump on the phone, send me the disaster paperwork, I sign it, get it right back to him. Hopefully, we don't need it the next day, but
Exactly.
it's there and it's done.
Yeah, Dan is probably, thank you for that. He's probably signed a lot of disaster declarations for me that really don't go anywhere, but I'd rather have that. So if I get into it and I realize, oh, I need this state level resource, I just upload it to the state and then it comes in. Any state level resource usually is free. As long as you're going through me as the proper channel, there's usually not a charge. So like a search and rescue team, canine specialty dogs or whatever, you know, any of that specialty stuff. As long as you go through me, there hasn't been a charge.
And from my experience working with Sean on this, you know, donations of time and resources. And I know RSVP has helped tremendously in this and kind of like having that account set up on the front side, regardless of where it is, what it looks like, having it set and ready to go. And then the other one would be as people come in with their time, they come in with their side by sides, their horse, you know, their cattle trailers, just themselves. Where we've seen frustration is that they have good intentions, they want to help, and a lot of them are able and willing and able to help. But if the mechanism isn't in place to get them to work and they're standing around, now that heart of a servant to help quickly becomes into disgruntled. Why did you guys aren't getting things done, but yet you're not taking my help? And quickly feathers start getting ruffled really fast when they're standing around. So I think that's one of the, there's multiple things that obviously emotions are high, therefore, tempers are short and all that kind of thing gets going naturally in a situation like this. But, those two things, like Sean's saying, when resources are coming in, how do we quickly enact them and put them into place without, lack of a better way of putting it, getting people disgruntled really, really quickly if they don't feel that their contribution is being appreciated and utilized.
So thank you for bringing that up. I would say get me involved as early as possible. If there's gonna be a large whatever, get me involved. I always tell my partners, like, I need to be activated. What I mean by that is I don't need it, but I try to live by that, like requesting. Let me come in, that way I know that you're open to suggestions, whatever. I don't want to just walk in and assert myself. The biggest thing, to piggyback on what Sheriff just said, is when you're getting to the point, and I know it's hard to hold the floodgate of citizens or spontaneous volunteers. They usually always have great intentions, but you have to hold that floodgate back until you are ready for them. The situations that happen, where maybe I wasn't involved with or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're getting in over their head and they want my help. Well, by then you've already got 2,000 people standing around saying, I'm here. So we, pump the brakes. What's that old saying? Slow is fast in the military. Is that how they say it, gentlemen? That's a perfect analogy for this. Let's take our time. Let's get our ducks in a row. Make sure we have team leaders for each one of these organizations that have reached out, and that team leader has a game plan. You're going to search from Main Street to Water Street, east and west, whatever that may be. That is what Byron hooked as team lead. He's going to have 7 people under him. They go through my simple QR code, scan in, scan out thing that I've got established. As soon as Byron comes in as team lead, a team hands him, this is your objective, number 1. He takes it, goes out, grabs the first 7 people that are checked in, and away they go. Now you're getting the cattle out of the pen, right? You're getting those out, they're doing something. Got objective number 2, which is Andy. Give Andy a brief, see if he has any questions. He says no, he takes it outside, grabs the next 7, 10 people, and away they go. But you have to be ready. You can't do it when people are doing this through the window. That never ends well. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you got something out of it, so.
Thank you.
All right. How long have you been?
Well, I used to be one of the biggest teachers down there. They still have them. But, I'll be honest with you, it's hard to get, like NICC wants people. They'll get a group of people. As soon as you're telling them, here's all the requirements. Then they're.
I think that's something I want to do. It's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, that's up to you. I'm not gonna.
That's why I see that.
Stop me.
Yeah, Winneshiek County is fortunate. We've got a good group of Winneshiek emergency responders. When compared to.